Gu Shun's eyes flew open with a jolt. Idle engine vibrations rippled through the steering wheel and into his bones. A crimson F-grade rating blazed across the dashboard like a gash of fresh blood, fuel at 15%, battery power down to 3%. A jagged crack spiderwebbed across the windshield, and only one intact rearview mirror remained. He pulled up the system forum, where posts refreshed at a frantic, dizzying pace. Got a military Humvee, full fuel, full power, reinforced bulletproof plating. Nearly brand new Mercedes G-Class. I hit the jackpot. Anyone who pulled a camper van is the chosen one here. Gu Shun glanced down at his own ride. A dilapidated camper van caked in rust, its fractures sealed crudely with packing tape. Its engine wheezing like an aging ox gasping for breath. He twitched his mouth helplessly. Then he spotted countless other unlucky souls sharing his plight. Three-wheeled motor rickshaw with a sidecar, doesn't even have doors. 20-year-old minivan spewing thick blue exhaust fumes. My motorcycle's fuel tank leaks nonstop. Am I just supposed to lie down and wait to die? A flicker of grim relief briefly settled over Gu Shun. That fleeting calm vanished the second he noticed something odd. His hands rested naturally on the steering wheel, his thumbs brushing absently against a tiny raised bump hidden out of sight. The indentation was far too concealed to spot unless he gripped the wheel tightly. He peered down, seeing nothing out of the ordinary. It looked like nothing more than a hollow cavity left behind by a broken factory button. There was no time to investigate further, however. 4 minutes remaining on the countdown. Gritting his teeth, Gu Shun pressed down on the gas pedal. The beat-up camper lurched forward onto the highway like a roused, caged beast. It struggled to climb to 40 kilometers per hour, the entire frame rattling and clanging violently as if it might disintegrate mid-movement. He stole a glance into the intact rearview mirror toward the horizon. Nothing stretched out behind him, yet the system announcement had been crystal clear. Once the countdown hit 0, the annihilation storm would advance with an initial velocity of 30 kilometers per hour. His broken vehicle could barely top 45 kilometers per hour, only 15 kilometers faster than the incoming tempest. Any stop to scavenge supplies would leave him vulnerable to being swallowed whole by the storm. Survivors driving Humvees and G-Wagons cruised comfortably at 60 to 70 kilometers an hour, looting resources at their leisure, growing stronger and faster with every haul they collected. They existed within a virtuous cycle of survival. Gu Shun, meanwhile, had been dumped straight into the edge of a vicious, self-defeating spiral from the very start. 3 minutes remaining. Hold together, Gu Shun muttered quietly, his knuckles whitening around the steering wheel. Once more, his thumb brushed that inconspicuous recess beneath his palm. The sensation was faint, easy to dismiss entirely, yet tangible, almost as if it were a switch deliberately hidden from plain view. 1 minute remaining. The forum had descended into total chaos. Users spammed posts tracking storm activation, safe zone boundaries, and the rule that richer resource deposits lined the forward sections of the highway. Nearly every survivor floored their accelerators, terrified of falling behind with no hope of catching up again. Gu Shun pushed his speedometer needle to its hard cap of 45 kilometers per hour. The engine malfunction indicator lamp flashed erratically, threatening to stall the vehicle on the open road at any second. Countdown complete. The sky dimmed abruptly. Through his rearview mirror, Gu Shun watched a thin black line materialize along the horizon. The streak thickened and expanded by the second, an inky tide devouring everything in its path from the edge of the world outward. The storm had arrived. Gu Shun slammed his foot fully into the gas. The camper van let out an ear-splitting metallic shriek, the speed gauge flickering wildly between 45 and 50 kilometers per hour. Beneath the F-grade score on the dashboard, small print caught his eye. Overall vehicle condition. F hidden functional module detected status. Inactive. A hidden functional module? What could that possibly be? There was no time to parse the message. The black mass of the storm drew ever nearer. A low, constant rumble rolled across the distance, carried on the mounting wind. Gu Shun reached for the hidden indentation on the steering column and pressed it firmly with his thumb. Nothing happened. The storm front closed in rapidly. A tangible drag tugged at the rear of the vehicle, as though invisible hands latched onto the camper's frame. The rusted chassis swayed erratically amid the wind, gravel and small stones pelting the metal body with sharp cracks. I'm not dying here, not like this. Gu Shun mashed the gas to the absolute limit the strained engine could tolerate, eking out a meager 2 extra kilometers per hour. The storm wall hung merely dozens of meters behind his rear bumper, locked in relentless pursuit. He refocused on the inactive label on the dashboard and noticed a minuscule flicker beside the battery icon. A faint current seemed to siphon power from the concealed button mechanism. The battery percentage still read 3%, yet the flickering pulsed quicker with each passing second. All survivors along the highway simultaneously jammed their accelerators to the floor, every vehicle surging forward in unison. Guhin kept his gas pedal welded down, the camper van stalling at 45 kilometers per hour while its engine screamed under unbearable strain. 2 hours passed before daylight faded completely. A system notification popped up, triggering night mode. Nighttime driving severely impairs visibility. Reduce speed or locate a secure resting area to park. Virtually no survivor dared halt their vehicles, for the destructive storm showed no mercy, even under cover of darkness. Gushin's predicament was far worse. His headlights were already dim to begin with, and the right headlight had burned out entirely. Only the left lamp cast a sickly yellow glow, barely illuminating a dozen meters of pavement ahead. To compound his troubles, the fuel gauge dipped to 8%. At his current fuel consumption rate, he had less than 2 hours of drivable range left. I have to find fuel, no other choice. Gushin ground his jaw together. He eased off the gas and scanned both sides of the highway. An abandoned service area came into view up ahead, littered with derelict vehicles alongside a defunct gas station. After a moment of hesitation, he steered the rattling camper into the service station lot. The engine issued a final, dying wheeze the instant the vehicle rolled to a full stop, cutting out entirely. Gushin checked the fuel gauge. 6% remained in the tank. The fuel was not completely exhausted, but the engine was thoroughly overtaxed. Continued driving would guarantee permanent mechanical failure. First priority, locate gasoline. He retrieved a flashlight from the glove compartment. Its batteries were nearly drained, casting a weak, murky beam of light. He pushed open the driver's door, greeted by a rush of dry, frigid air. Dust and rust permeated the air of the abandoned service area, and the wrecked vehicles loomed as menacing silhouettes in the dim darkness. Gripping the flashlight tightly, he hurried toward the gas station convenience store. Half the glass entrance door lay shattered. Gushin slipped sideways through the gap. Shelves had collapsed inward, goods strewn haphazardly across the dirty floor. He swept the space quickly, stuffing usable supplies into his backpack, several bottles of drinking water, 2 packs of field rations, a tin of canned luncheon meat, and a disposable lighter. Gasoline, however, remained nowhere to be found after a thorough search. A small storage room sat at the back of the convenience store. Gushin pushed the door open, shining his flashlight into the shadowed corners. 2 plastic fuel cans rested beneath a metal shelf. He lifted each can and shook them. One held roughly a third of its capacity, while the other was practically empty. Combined, they held an estimated 10 liters of fuel total. Better than nothing. He hefted both containers and headed for the exit. Just as he prepared to leave the store, the roar of an incoming engine echoed from outside. Guhin peered through the fractured glass pane. A black off-road SUV pulled into the service area, its brilliant high beams locking onto his broken camper van before coming to a halt directly beside it. 3 men climbed out of the vehicle. The leader was a tall, broad-shouldered man in a leather jacket with a tattoo winding up one forearm. A cigarette clamped between his lips. His 2 companions, one tall and lanky, the other short and stocky, both carried aggressive, hostile demeanors. Can't believe this heap of scrap metal still runs. The shorter man snickered at the sight of Gushin's camper. The tall man kicked hard against one of the camper's tires. Is this thing even roadworthy? Looks ready to fall apart at a touch. The leader paid no attention to the run-down vehicle. His gaze locked onto Gushin inside the store, then drifted to the fuel cans in his grasp. A cold smirk tugged at his lips. Hand over half that gasoline. His tone brooked zero argument, framed as a statement rather than a request. Gushin frowned and stayed silent. The shorter man advanced 2 paces forward, irritation sharp in his voice. Our boss is talking to you. Are you deaf? We're only taking half. Consider yourself lucky we're being this generous. Gushin understood how lopsided the conflict was. 3 physically imposing men with a high-performance SUV represented the upper echelon of players within this deadly survival game. He was alone, driving a vehicle on its last legs, unarmed and completely without leverage to negotiate. Even so, he spoke up, his voice quiet yet steady and unwavering. I need every drop of this fuel to keep moving. I can't spare any. The leader spat his cigarette onto the pavement and crushed it beneath his boot. He lifted his gaze to study Gushin with condescending disdain, regarding him as prey marked for slaughter. You will split the fuel with us whether you like it or not. His voice stayed calm, yet the oppressive weight of his threat intensified. Kid, the unwritten rule here is simple. The strong survive, the weak perish. Your van won't make it through tonight in the best-case scenario. This fuel is wasted on you. We take half, and you keep the rest to do whatever you want with it." The tall man fetched an empty spare fuel can from the SUV's rear cargo area and marched toward Gu Shun, reaching out to snatch the can straight from his hands. Gu Shun stepped backward, shining the flashlight directly into the man's face, but the attacker paid it no mind, his large hand closing around the fuel can handle. In that exact moment, a shrill, ear-piercing howl cut through the silence of the service station. Every person froze on the spot. The sound resembled a beast's furious roar layered with the screech of grinding metal, echoing out of the darkness behind the service station and drawing steadily closer. Guhin swiveled his flashlight beam toward the source of the noise, catching blurred, fast-moving shapes darting through the shadows. The creatures were roughly the size of large hunting hounds, moving with blinding speed, leaving faint streaks as they raced across the darkness. Mutated creatures. The shorter man's voice cracked with terror. Users on the system forum had long warned that mutated beasts roamed the wilderness beyond the highway. Nocturnal predators with vicious, unrelenting aggression. Most survivors kept their vehicles moving non-stop, so actual encounters with these monsters were rare. Now, however, this abandoned service station, shrouded in total night darkness, had become a hunting ground for the mutated life forms. Multiple snarls erupted all around the lot, echoing off the concrete structures. Gu Shun twisted his flashlight in every direction, only catching fleeting glimpses of the beasts each time they moved. The pack was closing in to encircle them completely. The leader's arrogant composure vanished in an instant. He spun and sprinted back toward his SUV, shouting urgently, "Get in the vehicle, now!" All three men bolted for their off-road truck simultaneously. Gu Shun discarded the fuel cans without hesitation and sprinted for his camper van. He threw open the driver's door, collapsed into the seat, and slammed the door shut hard. The sound of the ignition trying to turn over reverberated through the quiet lot. The camper emitted a series of harsh, choking clicks, refusing to fire up no matter how hard he twisted the key. "Start up, damn you, start." Gu Shun twisted the ignition lock frantically over and over. The SUV's engine roared to life without difficulty, its headlights blazing bright as its powerful engine rumbled deeply. The three men paid zero mind to Gu Shun's predicament. The vehicle peeled out in a sharp drift, tires screaming against the asphalt, racing back onto the highway and vanishing into the blackness within seconds. Every mutated creature redirected their full attention to the stationary, unlit camper, then struggling fruitlessly to start its engine. Gu Shun finally got a clear look at the monsters swarming his vehicle through the dark windows. They resembled enlarged hyenas with matte gray-black, hairless hides. Their limb joints bent at unnatural, twisted angles, their jaws lined with rows upon rows of sharp, densely packed fangs. Their eyes glowed faint crimson in the darkness. Dozens of faint red will-o'-the-wisps floating all around the camper frame. At least 7 or 8 of the beasts surrounded the vehicle. Gu Shun's hands trembled as he continued cranking the ignition, each failed attempt draining the last traces of remaining battery power. The dashboard backlight dimmed progressively, the single warning lamp flickering frantically. Click. The final ignition attempt depleted every last volt stored in the vehicle battery. The dashboard went completely dark, every warning light fading to black. Total silence swallowed the cabin, broken only by the unceasing snarls of the mutated beasts and the brutal scraping of claws against the rusted vehicle panels. A grating noise that sent chills crawling up his spine. The entire camper chassis shook violently under the assault. The decades-old rusted frame could not withstand sustained impact from the aggressive creatures. A metallic groan sounded from the driver's side door as the beasts pried a narrow gap open from underneath the paneling. Gu Shun gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles whitened. Escape was no longer an option. The vehicle was dead, power depleted, fuel critically low, and a pack of feral mutated predators trapped him inside the failing metal shell. The camper would be breached in mere minutes. The nearest surviving human was dozens of kilometers down the highway. No help would ever come. Paradoxically, overwhelming fear receded like a receding tide, replaced by cold, lucid despair. He thought back to his ordinary life before being pulled into this nightmare. All the unfinished plans and mundane daily moments violently cut short. Everything had happened far too fast, and his end loomed just as abruptly. In that split second, Gu Shun accepted his impending death. A mutated beast's claw snaked through the gap beneath the door, its scraping against metal far more agonizing than nails dragged across a chalkboard. He watched the gray-black appendage, with elongated segmented fingers and curved keratin talons, strained to widen the opening further. Colliding blows hammered against every exterior wall of the van. The old camper shuddered under the coordinated attack of the pack, akin to an exhausted ox being torn apart by a wolf pack. Gushun clenched the steering wheel reflexively, sweat soaking his palms. His left palm heel pressed unintentionally against a tiny raised protrusion on the steering column. A small circular button hidden flush against the steering shaft, a detail he had never noticed previously. The moment the button depressed, a faint vibration traveled through the steering wheel into his body. This tremor differed entirely from rough engine shuddering. It was soft, uniform, a quiet hum signifying something long dormant stirring awake. Click. With one crisp mechanical sound, the dead liquid crystal display embedded in the center console flared vividly to life. No longer the faint, faulty amber glow of the original vehicle warning lights, the entire screen illuminated with a soft pale blue luminescence. The outdated factory vehicle interface vanished entirely, replaced by unfamiliar text scrolling across the display. Infinite Power Core activated current power output. Infinity all onboard electrical systems restored. The vehicle's audio system also changed, shedding its cold robotic tone for a warm, human-inflected synthetic voice. The Infinite Energy Core is online. All vehicle systems operational. Welcome home, Commander. Gushun froze in stunned shock. Before he could process the revelation, drastic transformations unfolded throughout the camper cabin. Overhead interior lamps flickered back to life one after another. The dashboard lit up fully, and even the long-defunct mini refrigerator hummed to life, its cooling mechanism kicking on smoothly. A brand-new touchscreen panel materialized out of thin air within the empty button recess on the console, glowing with pale blue backlighting. Simultaneously, every external vehicle lamp powered on at once. Front and rear headlights, plus the rusted, non-functional roof searchlight burst forth with blinding white radiance. This was no longer the weak, sickly yellow beam from his single working headlight. Intense, surgical-grade white light flooded the surrounding area. The brilliant beam washed over the encircling mutated beasts, prompting all 8 creatures to shriek in agonizing pain. The predators were clearly extremely sensitive to harsh bright light. The beast closest to the door recoiled violently upon direct exposure to the glare, tumbling backward across the pavement with a wailing screech. The remaining mutated creatures retreated into a wider perimeter ring, their glowing red eyes fixed unblinkingly on the suddenly revitalized camper van. Gushun wasted no time dwelling on his astonishment. He checked the dashboard readout. Fuel still sat at 6%, but the battery indicator had vanished entirely, substituted by a spinning silver infinity symbol. He twisted the vehicle ignition key tentatively. The engine fired up instantly with a deep, resonant roar. The harsh, labored gasps and strained rattling of the old motor were gone entirely, replaced by a smooth, steady idle hum, as if the engine had undergone a complete overhaul. He glanced at the tachometer, its needle locked firmly at 800 RPM with zero chassis vibration whatsoever. Gushun engaged reverse gear and slammed on the gas pedal. The camper lurched backward sharply, tires squealing against the asphalt surface. He spun the steering wheel in one fluid motion, aligning the vehicle's front toward the service station exit. The formerly unresponsive van handled with pinpoint precision, sharp steering response, and instantaneous power delivery. The mutated beasts scattered backward against the glare of the searchlights. Several attempted to lunge at the vehicle's sides, yet shrank back immediately upon contact with the blinding illumination. Gushun shifted the gear into drive and slammed his foot hard on the gas pedal. The recreational vehicle roared onto the highway like a ferocious beast, the speedometer climbing rapidly from 0 to 40, 50, 60 kilometers per hour, and it kept rising. 65 kilometers an hour. Gushun stared at the gauge, his pupils widening slightly. The vehicle's top speed had previously capped at 45 kilometers per hour, accompanied by billowing smoke from the engine bay. Now it held steady at 65. The engine purred smoothly, and the rattling, precarious shuddering of the vehicle's frame had vanished entirely. He glanced into the rearview mirror toward the service area. The mutated creatures refused to give chase under the harsh glare of the headlights, merely lingering along the perimeter of the rest stop. Their crimson eyes faded into the darkness bit by bit. Gushun let out a long breath, only then noticing his shirt was soaked all the way through with sweat. What on earth just happened? He drove a safe distance away before leveling the speed at roughly 60 kilometers per hour to figure out the abrupt change. A brand new touchscreen panel had materialized on the center console, granting access to multiple operational interfaces. The first screen displayed the power system status. The input power read an infinity symbol, while output power fluctuated as he activated various onboard devices. He switched on the air conditioner. Chilled air rushed forcefully from the vents, maintaining a consistent temperature without fluctuation. Next, he turned on the induction cooker. Its display lit up, and the cooking surface began to heat up. He even powered on the compact refrigerator, which quickly dropped to a frigid internal temperature. Every piece of equipment functioned perfectly, with no visible drain on the power meter whatsoever. Gu Shun activated every electrical component on board. Air conditioning cranked to maximum output. The induction cooker, refrigerator, interior lights, front and main headlights, roof searchlight, and even the long-defunct radio, which crackled with static white noise. The monitoring panel registered a sharp surge in total output power, yet the input value remained fixed as the infinity symbol. The system had not deceived him. This was truly an endless power supply. But where is this power even coming from? Gu Shun muttered to himself. As if responding to his question, lines of text popped up across the vehicle's screen. Infinite Power Core. This vehicle has been designated a special carrier unit. Its core energy system has been upgraded to an inexhaustible power source. No refueling or recharging is required, and energy will never deplete. This feature cannot be duplicated, transferred, or forcibly seized by external forces. Gu Shun stared at the notification for 3 full seconds before a faint smile tugged at the corners of his mouth. He had once thought himself the unluckiest person among 8 billion humans. Now he realized the system had pulled a cruel trick, dragging him to the brink of total despair, only to anoint him a true chosen survivor. What good were Hummers or Mercedes G-Wagons anyway? No matter how massive their fuel tanks, gasoline would eventually run dry. No matter how full their battery packs, stored electricity would eventually dissipate. His beat-up, worn-out RV looked dilapidated on the outside, yet it would never run out of power. What did infinite electricity truly mean for him? It meant he would not need to scavenge frantically for gasoline and rechargeable batteries like every other survivor. It meant he could focus his attention on other critical tasks while everyone else wasted precious minutes panicking over depleting fuel reserves. It meant he could operate high-energy machinery without restraint, welding torches, power tools, heating gear, powerful lighting arrays, and any advanced technological equipment he might acquire in the future. Most crucially, electricity was far more than just fuel to operate vehicles within this survival game. Previous system notifications had mentioned future spawns of vehicle modification stations, many of which demanded massive volumes of power to utilize. Such upgrades were unattainable luxuries for ordinary survivors, yet an unlimited resource for him. Calming his racing thoughts, Gu Shun opened the system forum. He knew most survivors had been driving for 3 to 4 hours straight by this point, so fuel and battery anxiety would be plaguing the majority of players. Forum posts immediately validated his assumption. Help! My fuel warning light is flashing red, and the next gas station is 30 kilometers ahead. I don't think my tank has enough fuel to make it there. I found a barrel of gasoline by the roadside, but 3 other men tried to grab it. I fled immediately. My life matters more than fuel that can be found again later. My electric car is done for. Only 12% battery left, and there isn't a single charging station anywhere in sight. Am I stuck pushing this vehicle manually now? Does anyone know alternative locations to scavenge gasoline besides gas stations? I searched 3 abandoned buildings and only found food and clean water, not a single drop of fuel. Count your blessings upstairs. I looted 5 locations total and only recovered half a bottle of mineral water plus a screwdriver. This game is brutal for people with terrible loot luck. Guys, my car is completely out of fuel. I'm parked on the side of the road right now. Does anyone know how much longer until the storm front arrives? No replies appeared beneath that final desperate thread. Gu Shun scanned the panicked posts, then glanced back at the permanent infinity symbol on his dashboard, overcome with a complex rush of emotion. If not for the infinite power core, he would be the one begging for help on the forum right now. Or worse, his body would have been torn apart back at that service area. He closed the forum and refocused his attention on the paved highway stretching forward. With limitless power at his disposal, his entire survival strategy needed a full overhaul. First of all, he no longer needed to race forward recklessly to seize resource loot before other survivors. He had all the time in the world to search carefully. Second, he could leverage his boundless electricity to streamline resource gathering, powering any electric tools on demand, even charging external devices to barter for needed supplies. His most pressing priority, however, was boosting the RV's basic survivability. While infinite power solved propulsion and energy shortages, the vehicle's physical structure remained graded F tier. Corroded body panels, aged tires, and a loose, unstable chassis would not be repaired automatically by an endless power supply. Gu Xin scanned both sides of the highway. 2 kilometers ahead on the roadside, the system map marked an abandoned auto repair shop. He turned the steering wheel and headed toward the location. The repair shop was fairly sizable, fitted with a vehicle lift, 2 service bays, and piles of discarded spare parts and hand tools stacked against the outer walls. Gu Shen parked the RV in the shop's empty yard and cut the engine, but kept the vehicle's power system active. With unlimited electricity available, he could leave onboard electronics and exterior lights running indefinitely with zero cost. He pushed open the driver's door, grabbing a flashlight looted earlier from the convenience store before stepping onto the pavement. The flashlight had nearly died earlier, but he recharged it for a few minutes via the newly added USB port on the center console. It now cast an intensely bright beam comparable to a miniature spotlight. Gu Xin swept quickly through the repair shop and walked away with a generous haul of supplies. He found one intact spare tire. Though it was an inexpensive brand, it was vastly superior to his current worn tire, whose tread had worn thin enough to expose internal cords. He also recovered 2 cans of motor oil, 1 container of antifreeze, and a moderately complete set of mechanics hand tools. His greatest discovery sat locked inside a metal cabinet in the shop's rear corner, a portable electric welding machine. This welder required a steady 220-volt power source, rendering it useless scrap metal for nearly every other survivor trapped in the apocalypse. No one dared waste precious stored electricity on welding work. For Gu Shen, however, this welder was an invaluable treasure. He hauled the welding unit and all recovered tools back into the RV. He inspected the rear cargo space. The RV featured a compact internal layout. The front section housed the cockpit. The middle served as a small living area with bench seating and a foldable table, while the rear held a fixed double bed alongside a cramped restroom. Storage capacity was limited, yet ample empty space remained after stowing away his new tools and supplies. Gu Xin noticed several pre-cut slots and wiring ports embedded into the interior walls, clear signs that this RV had been manufactured with aftermarket modification and upgrades in mind. He spent roughly 40 minutes performing emergency maintenance on the vehicle using the parts and tools scavenged from the repair shop. He swapped out the old tire for the spare, topped off the motor oil and antifreeze reservoirs, then reinforced the dented lower door panels, damaged by the mutated creature's claws, using sheet metal and metal rivets. The vehicle's structural flaws were not fully resolved, but the critical repairs were enough to allow safe, continued travel. The moment Gu Shen hammered the final rivet into place, a system alert echoed inside his mind. This announcement carried a solemn, ceremonial tone, unlike the usual robotic monotone of standard notifications. Global announcement: Phase 1 of the Highway Survival Challenge has been active for 6 hours. Total participants: 7,942,000,000. Total eliminated participants: 58 million. Gu Shen nearly dropped the wrench gripped in his hand. 58 million people had perished in just 6 short hours. The staggering number doused the fleeting sense of triumph he had felt after unlocking infinite power, cold dread washing over his entire body. Updated content for Phase 2 is now live. 1. The vehicle upgrade system has officially launched. Blueprints for all vehicle modifications can be randomly obtained from roadside resource crates, abandoned structures, and the corpses of mutated creatures. Once you gather all required materials listed on a blueprint, you may upgrade your carrier's performance and functional capabilities. 2. The System Trade Marketplace is now accessible. Survivors may exchange goods through the system interface using survival points as universal currency. Survival points are earned by slaying mutated creatures, completing assigned system missions, or selling surplus items on the marketplace. 3. Behavioral patterns of mutated creatures have been updated. Nocturnal activity levels for all monsters have increased, and a subset of mutated life forms have evolved basic cognitive intelligence. All survivors are advised to heighten vigilance. 4. Resource spawn mechanics revised. Regions closer to the advancing storm front feature higher spawn rates and higher quality loot. Greater danger yields greater rewards. The forum erupted into chaos immediately following the global announcement. 58 million people wiped out, and this is only 6 hours into the game. Vehicle upgrade blueprints. Can I turn my Hummer into a fully armored vehicle? Does anyone know reliable blueprint spawn locations? The trade market is open. I have 2 barrels of gasoline I want to trade for food supplies. Anyone interested in a deal? How do you farm survival points exactly? By fighting mutated beasts? No sane person would dare attack those monsters head-on. Better loot near the storm? That's basically forcing us to gamble with our lives. Why would anyone willingly travel toward an incoming deadly storm? Gushin scrolled through the flood of forum posts while his mind raced nonstop. Vehicle upgrade blueprints were his most urgent need right now. His RV had shoddy base construction. Even with unlimited electricity, structural integrity, suspension, and tire performance could not be fixed by power alone. He needed blueprints to rebuild and reinforce every inch of his worn vehicle. The trade marketplace and survival point economy meant a formal in-game economic system was fully established. His infinite power was an unmatched latent advantage. He just needed to figure out how to convert his boundless electricity into tradable survival points. The revised resource spawn rule posed a brutal trade-off for every other survivor. Valuable supplies came paired with lethal storm proximity risks. For Gushin, however, sustained driving speed allowed him to linger safely along the storm's edge far longer than any other player could manage. He restarted the RV and merged back onto the main highway. His driving strategy shifted completely. Previously, he had crawled along at 45 kilometers per hour, paranoid of wasting even a single drop of gasoline. His fuel tank still held limited reserves, yet his mindset had transformed entirely. He no longer needed to burn time and energy hunting for fuel and charging stations. Every ounce of his focus could be directed toward gathering gasoline stockpiles and hunting for upgrade blueprints. Most importantly, he could travel at high cruising speeds without hesitation. Gushin pressed harder on the gas, locking the vehicle's speed at a steady 65 kilometers per hour. Roadside scenery blurred past his windows as he overtook countless other survivor vehicles. A smoke-belching van fell far behind him. Its driver shot a bewildered stare out the window, baffled by the sight of a beat-up old RV moving at such high velocity. A two-person team rode sluggishly atop an electric tricycle, its battery indicator glowing bright red as its speed visibly faded with every passing second. The young man riding the tricycle shouted something toward Gushin as he passed, yet strong highway winds drowned out every word. A sedan sat broken down on the roadside with its hood propped open. A middle-aged man hunched over the engine block, his hands coated in grease, his face etched with pure hopelessness. He lifted his head to watch Gushin drive past, parted his lips as if to beg for help, then fell silent without uttering a single word. Sympathy stirred within Gushin's chest, yet he understood the unforgiving rules of this survival world. Kindness was an unaffordable luxury when one could barely secure their own survival. After roughly 1 hour of driving, a large-scale resource spawn zone came into view ahead on the highway. Icons on his system map marked a gas station, a convenience store, and an auto repair workshop within the compound. Most critically, a blinking treasure crate icon hovered over the area, signifying a possible vehicle upgrade blueprint drop. Gushin spotted a second detail that gave him pause. The zone was marked with a moderate hazard rating, confirming active mutated creature presence. He slowed the RV to observe his surroundings. The gas station and convenience store appeared mostly intact, but the roll-up garage door of the repair workshop was heavily dented and warped from heavy impacts originating inside the building. Dark, corrosive liquid stains stained the pavement outside the garage entrance rather than ordinary blood. Gushin hesitated for 3 seconds before reaching a final decision. He parked the RV along the gas station perimeter, kept the engine idling, and angled the vehicle's front toward the open highway for a quick emergency escape, if needed. He activated the roof-mounted searchlight, its blinding white beams sweeping across the entire resource compound. No movement stirred anywhere within the premises. Grabbing a large heavy wrench scavenged earlier for self-defense, Gushin stepped out of the RV. The harsh searchlight beam granted a measure of safety. Smaller mutated creatures reacted violently to intense brightness, buying him precious seconds of reaction time if ambushed. Gushin sprinted first toward the gas station. The fuel dispenser displays were dead, yet the internal fuel pumps remained functional. Upon testing the mechanism, he confirmed gasoline could still be pumped out without issue. He had no personal need for gasoline, yet fuel was an extremely valuable hard currency in this wasteland. Stockpiling barrels would prove useful for future trades. He quickly fetched empty fuel canisters from the RV and began filling them with gasoline, collecting roughly 40 liters total. As he twisted the cap onto his final full fuel can, a low, guttural roar boomed from deep inside the repair workshop. The roar was far louder and more oppressive than any sound he had heard from mutated creatures at the service area. The ground vibrated faintly beneath his feet as the warped garage door shuddered under a powerful blow from within, echoing with a deafening metallic clang. Gushin froze mid-motion. A second violent strike ripped 2 anchor bolts free from the wall anchoring the door frame. sending the metal fasteners flying across the concrete lot. On the third impact, the entire roll-up door tore loose from its frame and crashed onto the ground in a cloud of dust and debris. A massive silhouette emerged from the settling dust cloud. This mutated beast was nearly the size of a compact car, its body a grotesque fusion of reptilian and mammalian traits. Thick charcoal gray chitinous plates covered its frame, supported by 4 heavily muscled limbs. A long, thick tail extended from its hindquarters, capped with a dense bony hammer protrusion. Its most horrifying feature was its exposed skull, stripped bare of skin and flesh. Rows of jagged, serrated teeth jutted from its open jaws, thick viscous fluid dripping continuously onto the pavement and hissing as it corroded the concrete surface on contact. Its crimson eyes held far more than the primitive rage seen in lesser monsters. Calculation, caution, the cold scrutiny of a seasoned predator sizing up its prey. System, elite mutated creature, hammer-tailed beast. Threat level, high. Recommended countermeasure, engage only with a team of no fewer than 3 survivors, or retreat immediately. Gushin spun on his heel to run without hesitation. He only took 3 running steps before freezing, confronted with an unavoidable truth. He could never outrun this monster. Judging by its bulk and muscle definition, its burst sprint speed vastly outmatched any human runner. The beast had locked its gaze firmly onto Gushin. Instead of charging instantly, it advanced slowly and deliberately, toying with its trapped prey. Gushin retreated step by step while scanning his surroundings. The gas station toll booth sat to his left, the crumbled remains of the convenience store to his right, and his RV stood less than 20 meters directly behind him. His gaze locked onto the gasoline dispensers. The pumps were still connected to underground fuel storage tanks. He had no way of knowing how much gasoline remained buried beneath the station, but a deliberate explosion would create his only viable escape route. A desperate, high-risk plan solidified in his mind, the only chance he had to survive this encounter. Gushin drew in a deep breath and sprinted abruptly back toward the RV. The hammer-tailed beast lunged forward the second he moved, accelerating far faster than Gushin had anticipated. The instant Gushin wrenched open the driver's door, a massive claw swiped sideways and slammed hard into the RV's metal wall panel. The entire vehicle rocked violently, 3 deep gouges torn into the sheet metal. The force of the strike nearly knocked Gushin out of the vehicle entirely. Gushin tumbled into the driver's seat and slammed the door shut. The beast struck a second time with its heavy hammer tail, slamming into the RV's side panel with a dull, thunderous crash and caving a large indentation into the vehicle's frame. Instead of starting the engine to flee, Gushin killed the ignition entirely. He left every single vehicle light active. However, headlights, taillights, and the roof searchlight all aimed directly at the aggressive elite monster. The searing brightness forced the beast to let out a pained roar. It stumbled backward 2 paces, raising its thick tail to shield its sensitive eyes from the glare. This was his opening. Gushin snatched 1 full gasoline canister, threw open the RV door, and sprinted outward while splashing gasoline across the concrete pavement in a wide circular ring surrounding the fuel dispensers. Once the hammer-tailed beast adjusted to the harsh brightness and noticed Gushin standing out in the open, it charged forward once more. Gushin hurled a lit lighter onto the gasoline-soaked ground without a moment's delay. Flames erupted upward instantly, racing along the gasoline trail to engulf the fuel dispensers. High-temperature fire warped the dispenser casings, igniting volatile gasoline vapor trapped inside the units. The resulting blast was far more powerful than Gushin had anticipated. The explosion's shockwave threw Gushin backward through the air. He crashed heavily onto the hard pavement, his ears ringing with a deafening hum and his vision blurring into static darkness. He dragged himself shakily upright to witness a towering fireball billowing skyward. Half the gas station's overhead roof had been torn apart by the blast, flames and black smoke surging high into the night sky. The hammer-tailed beast thrashed wildly within the blazing inferno, its whole body engulfed in roaring fire as agonized screeches ripped through the air. It attempted to break free from the flames, yet Gushin's gasoline perimeter trapped the monster within the wall of fire on all sides. Gushin stumbled unsteadily back to the RV, collapsed into the driver's seat, ignited the engine, and spun the vehicle back onto the highway. Through the rearview mirror, he watched the massive beast's body collapse motionless amid the burning wreckage, sending showers of glowing embers into the air. System alerts. Elite mutated creature hammer-tailed beast eliminated. 500 survival points awarded. Detecting recoverable materials within the hammer-tailed beast's corpse. Retrieve the loot at your earliest convenience. Gu Shun pulled the RV over onto the highway shoulder and gasped for air in ragged gulps. His hands trembled violently, his heart hammering so hard it felt ready to burst out of his ribcage. That had been far too close. He had nearly been crushed by that beast's tail. He had no time to dwell on the relief of narrowly escaping death, for the system's second alert jolted him fully alert. Salvageable materials existed inside the hammer-tail beast's body. Gritting his teeth, Gu Shun fetched a long-handled sledgehammer and an iron crowbar from the vehicle, then walked back toward the smoldering blaze. Charred cracks spread across the hammer-tail beast's carapace under the fire's searing heat, releasing a foul, burnt stench into the air. He pried open the carbonized shell with the crowbar and rummaged through the creature's insides, eventually retrieving a fist-sized orb glowing with a faint luminescence. The sphere had a sleek, smooth surface, with liquid-like energy swirling endlessly within its core. The moment Gu Shun's fingers made contact with the orb, a system notification popped up. Obtained. Rare LV.2 Vehicle Upgrade Blueprint Required Materials. Mutant Creature Carapace times 10, Scrap Metal times 50, Survival Points times 200. Preview of Upgrade Effects Exterior Modifications. The vehicle body will be clad in composite armor forged from mutant carapace material for enhanced impact resistance. Metal anti-puncture mesh will be installed behind windows to block strikes from mutant claws. Reinforced skid plates will line the chassis to prevent terrain damage. A retractable spotlight mount will be fitted to the roof, boosting illumination range to 50 meters. Interior modifications. Optimized spatial layout expands living quarters by 20%. Bench seats convert into foldable workbenches capable of basic repair and modification tasks. Modular storage improves item access and organization efficiency. An upgraded interface panel will be added to the driver's console to support additional functional modules. Gu Shun clutched the blueprint tightly, a slow grin spreading across his face. This brutal fight had been well worth the trouble. The beast's carapace counted toward his upgrade materials, so he had no intention of leaving it to waste. He waited for the flames to die down slightly, then used the crowbar to peel off burnt shell fragments and lever free all intact sections of the carapace. The hammer-tail beast was roughly the size of a compact automobile, boasting an expansive carapace covering its frame. Though portions had been scorched away by fire, several large shell plates along its back and tail remained undamaged. He spent nearly 20 minutes stripping away every usable piece, collecting 7 whole carapace slabs in total. Dozens of smaller shell shards were left behind, but the system marked them unusable, forcing him to abandon those scraps. The carapace material felt surprisingly heavy to the touch, bearing a ceramic-like outer texture paired with tough, flexible inner layers. Striking it with the iron bar produced a dull, solid thud. The material weighed less than standard steel, yet boasted far superior hardness. After hauling all the carapace pieces onto his RV, Gu Shun tallied his current stock of upgrade components. Mutant Creature Carapace, 7 pieces, Scrap Metal, 0 units, Survival Points, 500. Once he finished sorting the materials, Gu Shun restarted the RV. The massive blow from the hammer-tail beast's tail had caved in one side wall, making the doors stick and hard to operate, while cracks spiderwebbed across areas previously reinforced with rivets. I need to keep this rig held together long enough to gather the rest of the upgrade materials, he muttered to himself. Checking the system map, he spotted a location marked Abandoned Vehicle Junkyard roughly 15 kilometers up the highway. Piles of discarded vehicles meant nothing more than worthless scrap to ordinary survivors. But for him, the junkyard was an unrestricted stockpile of metal resources. He pressed on toward the marker, stopping briefly at a roadside supply crate along the way. Inside, he found a long pry bar and a roll of thick steel wire, which he stowed inside the vehicle's storage locker. 20 minutes later, Gu Shun arrived at the Abandoned Vehicle Junkyard. The site stretched across an area the size of a full football field, crammed densely with hundreds of wrecked sedans, cargo trucks, and several broken pieces of construction machinery. Every vehicle was coated in thick rust, stripped of tires and shattered glass littered the ground. The air hung thick with the sharp tang of rust and stagnant motor oil. Gu Shun parked his RV at the junkyard's perimeter and switched on all headlights and spotlights to chase away the surrounding darkness. From his toolbox, he pulled out a portable welding machine, running an extension cord to plug the device into the RV's dashboard power port. Thanks to his vehicle's unlimited power supply, he could run the welder at maximum output without any risk of draining energy reserves. Donning protective goggles, he ignited the welding torch beside the nearest wrecked pickup truck. Brilliant blue arcs sliced through the darkness, cutting through metal 10 times faster than any manual saw ever could. One slab after another, he sliced through discarded vehicles as easily as cutting soft tofu, stacking salvaged steel plates, structural bars, and framing pieces beside his RV. After 40 minutes of continuous work, he had collected far more scrap metal than the required 50 units. Uniform steel sheets could be used directly for reinforcing the RV hull. Metal bars were shaped into protective framing. He also stockpiled large quantities of loose screws, rivets, and bolts. Gu Shun hauled all the metal aboard his vehicle and brushed rust dust off his palms. He had more than enough scrap metal, with plenty left over as surplus. Only 3 more carapace pieces were needed now to complete the material list. Kneeling in the RV's rear compartment, he stacked the 7 carapace slabs alongside his pile of salvaged metal, his gaze drifting repeatedly toward the upgrade blueprint. 3 more carapaces. He pulled up the system's player trading marketplace, scrolling through the endless stream of posted trades. Food traded for gasoline, medical supplies exchanged for survival points, tires swapped for batteries. Every conceivable type of barter was listed on the board that he typed carapace into the search bar, bringing up only 4 active listings. Mutant creature carapace times 1 price. 300 survival points. Gu Shun immediately skipped this grossly overpriced offer. Mutant creature carapace times 2 wanted. 1 crate of gasoline. He rolled his eyes. A full crate of gasoline could power a regular vehicle for hundreds of kilometers, making this a terrible trade by any measure. Mutant creature carapace times 1 price. 100 survival points. His finger paused over this entry. His current balance sat at 500 points. Purchasing this would leave him with 400 remaining, a cost he could comfortably afford. Mutant creature carapace times 3 open to negotiation. Note attached. My vehicle has lost all power and is stranded roadside. We'll trade carapaces for charging service at marker K117. Gu Shun opened the location tag for the listing, prompting the system map to auto-center on the coordinates. Highway K117 lay roughly 30 kilometers ahead along the main highway. Trading carapaces just to get their vehicle charged, a faint smile tugged at Gu Shun's lips. This trade was practically tailor-made for his unique advantages. To every other survivor, supplying power to a dead vehicle meant wasting fuel and draining their own limited electricity, a losing proposition. For Gu Shun, the only cost was the half-hour drive to reach the location. He instantly selected the negotiate option and sent a system message to the seller. En route. Arrival in approximately 30 minutes. Less than 10 seconds passed before a reply appeared. You actually have a way to charge vehicles? I drive an electric car. Its battery is completely dead and the vehicle is too heavy to push manually. I have a mobile power source. Gu Shun replied without elaborating further. We can sort out the details once I arrive. He started the RV and merged onto the highway, holding a steady speed of 60 kilometers per hour as the black nightscape blurred backward past his windows. 20 minutes into the drive, the system map alerted him that he was approaching Highway K117. Gu Shun slowed the RV and spotted a silver electric sedan parked on the highway shoulder with all its lights dark, a faint human figure visible inside the driver's seat. He parked his RV directly behind the sedan, keeping his headlights illuminated, then stepped out of the driver's cabin. A young woman in her mid-20s sat behind the sedan's wheel, her hair tied back in a ponytail with faint smudges of dirt streaked across her cheeks. Visible relief washed over her features when she saw Gu Shun approaching, and she exited her vehicle to meet him. You're the one with the mobile power supply? Her tone carried clear wariness as her eyes swept over Gu Shun's weathered RV exterior, though she showed no trace of disdain for its worn condition. That's me, Gu Shun nodded. 3 intact carapaces for a full battery charge. Do we have a deal? Absolutely, she agreed without hesitation. Fair warning. This is a pure electric vehicle with specific fast charging power requirements. Standard household outlets won't be able to power it up. No issues on my end. Gu Shun retrieved an industrial-grade extension cord from his RV, plugging one end into the dashboard power interface and connecting the other to the sedan's charging port. He pulled up the vehicle power control panel on his dashboard and adjusted the output wattage to match the sedan's fast charging specifications. A line of text flashed across the vehicle system screen. External power supply mode activated. Output power. 7 kilowatts electric current surged through the cable into the sedan's battery pack, triggering a flashing green charging indicator on the car's dashboard. The woman stared at the blinking light in stunned disbelief, blinking repeatedly to confirm it was truly active. You've got some kind of high-output generator installed on board? She asked, unable to contain her curiosity. Something along those lines. Gu Shun gave a vague answer. Charging will finish in about 30 minutes. The woman studied him quietly for a moment before introducing herself. I'm Lin Yao. What's your name? Gu Shun. I owe you a serious favor, Gu Shun. Lin Yao leaned against her car door, tension finally slipping from her shoulders. I've been stuck here for over an hour watching system announcements warn the violent storms are intensifying by the hour. If you'd shown up a few hours later, I would have had no choice but to abandon my vehicle entirely. Gu Shun stayed silent. He knew full well what abandoning a vehicle meant in this brutal highway survival world. Without a mobile shelter, human survivors became easy prey trapped between raging storms and rampaging mutant beasts. 20 minutes into the charging cycle, Lin Yao opened her sedan's trunk and pulled out a black travel bag. Unzipping it, she revealed 3 pristine carapace pieces tucked inside. Inspect them first if you'd like, she said, holding the bag out toward him. Gu Shun took the carapaces into his hands. They felt dense and smooth with a polished finish, even more intact than the specimens he had harvested from the hammertail beast. A system notification promptly appeared. Acquired mutant creature carapace ×3. Condition, pristine. Eligible for upgrade crafting. They're acceptable. Gu Shun carried the carapaces back into his RV storage area. 30 minutes later, the electric sedan's battery climbed to 95% charge. Lin Yao glanced down at her dashboard readout. This charge will keep me mobile for quite a while. I won't forget this kindness. If you ever need assistance out on these highways, reach out anytime. I'm still alive and traveling. Gu Shun gave a brief nod, declining unnecessary pleasantries. He coiled up the power cord and returned to his RV cockpit. The two drivers exchanged a quick honk as farewell before heading down separate highway paths. Gu Shun pulled his RV over to a safe roadside clearing and stepped into the rear compartment. He laid his original 7 carapaces alongside the 3 newly acquired pieces. 10 carapaces, complete. 50 units of scrap metal, more than sufficient. 500 survival points. Deducting the required 200 leaves him with 300 remaining. Taking a deep breath, he pulled out the LV.2 upgrade blueprint and pressed his palm flat against its surface. A system prompt materialized before his eyes. All required upgrade materials detected. Initiate vehicle upgrade. Upgrade process will take 20 minutes, during which the vehicle will be immobile. Gu Shun scanned the pitch-black surroundings. The RV spotlight beam swept across both sides of the empty highway, revealing no signs of danger or hostile creatures within sight. Start the upgrade. The instant the upgrade sequence initiated, a low resonant hum reverberated throughout the entire RV, distinct from the rumble of the engine, more akin to raw energy flowing through every structural component of the vehicle. Gu Shun settled into the driver's seat and watched as the dashboard display switched to an upgrade progress interface, a circular loading bar slowly filling from left to right. A small line of text sat beneath the progress meter. Vehicle structural reconstruction in progress. Do not relocate vehicle. Estimated remaining time, 19 minutes, 58 seconds. He peered out the windows as the spotlight beam continued to cast steady white illumination over the silent highway surroundings. The first physical changes began manifesting inside the living space. The transformation started with the ceiling overhead. The stained, scratched original ceiling panels smoothed over into a seamless matte surface, shifting from dingy off-yellow to soft cream white. A row of slender, warm-toned LED strips materialized along the ceiling edge, their brightness gradually rising to settle at a gentle, comfortable warm glow. The even, diffused lighting eliminated the harsh, dim, uneven illumination from the vehicle's original faulty headlights entirely. Next came a noticeable shift in ambient temperature. The air inside the RV warmed steadily, while the stale mixture of rust and dust odors faded rapidly, replaced by a faint, clean scent reminiscent of fresh natural timber. Gu Shun glanced down at the vehicle floor. The worn, scuffed rubber floor mats covering the driver's area dissolved away, replaced piece by piece with polished hardwood flooring displaying clear natural grain patterns, firm and stable underfoot. The wooden flooring spread outward from the cockpit toward the rear living quarters like ripples across water, covering decades of built-up grime and dust beneath a smooth, warm wood finish. He glanced backward toward the lounge area. The rickety foldable table and chair set dismantled itself under invisible forces and reconstructed into a plush dark gray fabric sofa with reinforced, ergonomically angled backrests engineered for optimal support and comfort. The original fold-down wall-mounted table remained integrated into the wall design, but expanded to nearly double its original width, topped with a smooth matte hard-wearing lacquered surface solid to the touch. To his pleasant surprise, a hidden pull-out storage drawer was built directly beneath the table surface, partitioned into segmented compartments perfectly sized for tableware, handheld tools, and assorted small supplies. Across from the sofa, the chipped, peeling wall paneling transformed into continuous soft gray fabric wall padding lined with sound-insulating backing, yielding slightly under gentle finger pressure. Shortly afterward, running water echoed from the bathroom area. Gushin leaned toward the half-open bathroom door to find the interior space visibly expanded. The cramped shower stall that had barely allowed a person to turn now offered nearly double the usable area, fitted with a brand-new polished metallic shower head and non-slip drainage grating on the floor. The basic single wash basin was upgraded into a full vanity counter with under-sink cabinet storage, paired with a brand-new framed mirror with smoothly finished rounded trim. The most dramatic improvements were reserved for the sleeping quarters at the rear of the RV. The original rusted bed frame supported an ultra-thin mattress that offered zero cushioning, leaving occupants feeling every hard metal slat beneath them as they rested. Now the bed framework reconstructed into a sturdy reinforced metal frame fitted with a thick latex mattress. When Gushin tested its surface by sitting down, the material sank gently under his weight while delivering consistent supportive resistance. Recessed individually adjustable reading lights were embedded along the headboard, each capable of independent angle and brightness tuning. Built directly into the headboard wall were wall power outlets, USB charging ports, plus a flip-up covered side tray ideal for holding personal belongings or serving as a compact work surface while resting in bed. Upgrades continued in the kitchen zone as well. The single induction cooktop expanded into a dual burner setup with an integrated stainless steel food prep counter alongside it. The onboard refrigerator was upgraded to a larger, quieter unit fitted with a touchscreen display embedded into the fridge door, showing internal temperature readings and allowing users to independently adjust cooling and freezing compartment temperatures. Slide-out storage drawers were installed underneath the refrigerator for categorized storage of food goods and kitchen utensils. Most welcome of all was a compact water purification unit mounted beside the induction cooktop, with its main body secured beneath the counter and an extendable metallic faucet dispensing clean, odor-free water when opened. Water purifier connected to vehicle power supply, capable of filtering raw water collected from external roadside water sources. This upgrade freed Gushin from total reliance on bottled water and scavenged drinking water looted from abandoned convenience stores. Checking the progress bar, 7 minutes remained until completion. Minor quality-of-life adjustments kept unfolding across the cabin. Full-length dark gray blackout curtains were fitted to every window, gliding smoothly along their tracks for complete light blockout. A foldable bookrest was installed beside the lounge seating area, alongside discrete recessed wall hooks for hanging outerwear and backpacks. The driver's seat cracked faux leather upholstery was swapped for breathable perforated material with adjustable lumbar support built into the backrest. Sound-dampening filler material was injected into all cabin joints and noise-prone sections, drastically cutting down overall interior ambient noise levels. Even the onboard radio tuned automatically to a distant broadcast station, soft faint music drifting faintly through the vehicle speakers. With 2 minutes left on the upgrade timer, the cabin lighting dimmed and recalibrated automatically, while the climate control system activated. Warm air circulated evenly through concealed air vents to stabilize the entire RV interior at a pleasantly temperate constant level. A crisp system chime marked the end of the process. Upgrade complete. Vehicle tier, LV.2. Overall vehicle condition rating. De-seated in the driver's seat, Gushin stared back at the fully renovated living space in quiet awe. Barely half an hour prior, this vehicle had been nothing more than a battered rust-streaked metal shell choked with dust, cracks, and mildew. It had now been transformed into a fully functional, comfortable mobile dwelling, a genuine home on wheels. He exited the RV and circled the exterior to inspect the outer defensive upgrades. The vehicle body was wrapped in dark gray composite armor forged from melted and reforged hammertail beast carapace material, covering doors, windows, front fascia, and side panels alike. Knocking against the plating produced a deep, solid resonant thud. Original windows were replaced with double-layer shatterproof glass reinforced with internal metal anti-slash-mesh. The retractable, rotatable automated spotlight platform was mounted to the roof, extending effective illumination out to 50 meters, and reinforced protective plating now lined the entire vehicle chassis underside. External improvements were satisfying, yet Gushin knew full well it was the changes within himself that truly made him feel alive again. He returned to the driver's seat and shut the car door. The moment the latch clicked shut, most of the howling wind outside faded away. The cabin fell quiet and warm. Soft light spilled over the wooden flooring, while the fabric-lined walls diffused a clean, comforting warmth through the space. He glanced at the vehicle stats displayed on his system panel. Vehicle, Modified Recreational Vehicle Unnamed Level. LV.2 Overall Rating. Grade D Power Core. Infinite Energy Core Infinity Output Armor. Mutant Creature Carapace Composite Armor LV.2 Defenses. Blast-proof windows with reinforced metal mesh, heavy-duty underbody skid plate. Living amenities, full cabin temperature control heating cooling, water purification unit, dual induction cooktops, expanded capacity refrigerator, latex mattress, sound dampening upholstery, dimmable ambient lighting special features, retractable 50-meter searchlight mount, foldable workbench, external power supply mode next upgrade requirement. Reach LV.3 via acquisition of higher-tier construction blueprints. Gu Shun dismissed the interface and fired up the engine. He drove for roughly 10 minutes before spotting a large freight truck jackknife it across the roadway dead ahead. The truck blocked nearly 2 full lanes, its cab twisted sideways, and its cargo trailer tilted precariously. Gu Shun slowed down to navigate around the obstruction. When he drew within 50 meters of the wreck, 2 dark figures burst forth from the shadowed rear of the cargo hold. They were not human, mutant beasts. 2 creatures the size of fully grown wild boars lunged out simultaneously from either side, moving with terrifying speed. Their skins stretched taut as if ruptured from internal bodily distortion. Their limb joints bent backward at unnatural angles. Rows of jagged bony spines jutted along their spines, and their jaws split open all the way to their temples to reveal dark crimson oral cavities. A system alert popped up. Common mutant creature, 2X Rift Moss. Threat level, moderate. Recommendation, maintain safe distance, avoid close quarters combat. If this had happened earlier in his ordeal, Gu Shun would have immediately plotted an escape route. Now he watched the charging Rift Moss with steady hands resting on the steering wheel, eager to test the defensive limits of his LV.2 armor. The first beast leaped toward the left side of the RV, lunging straight for the driver's window with its jaws agape. Through the dual-layer blast-resistant glass and metal reinforcement mesh, Gu Shun clearly made out rows of barbed, needle-sharp teeth lining its maw. Crack! The beast's jaws clamped hard against the window with a dull, heavy thud. A faint tremor rippled through the glass, but that was the full extent of the impact. The creature's fangs wedged tight within the gaps of the metal mesh, trapping it mid-air. It thrashed violently for several seconds, jerking its head in a frantic attempt to pull free, only to remain snared by the sturdy barrier. Gu Shun pressed the window control on the center console, no movement whatsoever. The paired glass and metal shielding had withstood the blow effortlessly. He shifted into reverse and tapped the gas lightly. The RV rolled back 2 meters, dragging the trapped Rift Maw along the window as its hind legs scrabbled uselessly against the asphalt, letting out enraged, desperate howls. The second mutant charged the vehicle's right door. A loud clang echoed through the cabin as its body slammed into the composite armor plating. The door caved inward by no more than the thickness of a fingernail before springing back to its original shape. Gu Shun checked the armor status indicator on the inner door panel. Impact absorbed, structural integrity fully intact. A faint twitch tugged at the corner of his mouth. Once he had backed far enough away, he shifted back into drive and turned the wheel slightly right. The RV surged forward, slamming bodily into the Rift Maw still clinging to the driver's window. A sickening crunch echoed as the dark gray composite armor collided with the beast's skeletal frame. The creature was sent flying across the pavement, rolling several times before falling still with sporadic spasms. Witnessing its companion struck down, the second Rift Maw flew into a greater frenzy and charged head-on for the vehicle's hood. Gu Shun floored the accelerator, driving the RV straight into the oncoming monster. The collision produced a grisly sound of bone and hardened carapace shattering together. The beast's skull crumpled against the hood's armor plating, and its entire body was dragged beneath the vehicle. A dull shudder traveled through the undercarriage skid plate, then silence returned. Gu Shun brought the RV to a halt and checked his rearview mirror. Both Rift Maws lay motionless on the asphalt. A system notification appeared, eliminated 2 common-tier mutant creatures, Rift Maw. Reward, 120 survival points. He gripped the steering wheel and assessed the vehicle's condition following the 2 collisions and 1 direct run-over. The RV's framework remained stable, marked only by faint scratches across the armor surface. The underbody skid plate had absorbed the weight and impact of crushing the mutant without any deformation. Not long after arriving in this wasteland, 7 small mutant creatures had trapped him inside an abandoned service station, leaving him waiting helplessly for death. Now he had not even unbuckled his seatbelt, yet the two dangerous beasts had been disposed of with ease. Gushin made no immediate move to leave. It would be foolish to pass up the supplies stored inside this stranded truck. He parked the RV securely, grabbed a long-handled pry bar, and stepped out. After confirming both Rift Maws were truly deceased, he circled around to the rear of the truck's cargo container. The container door hung ajar with a narrow gap visible along the seam. Gushin pried open the lock with his tool and slowly swung the door wide. The sight inside gave him a brief moment of pause. Neatly stacked supply crates filled the hold, not scattered, rotting salvage typical of wasteland ruins, but sealed goods wrapped in waterproof tarpaulins and fastened down with heavy binding straps. Gushin peeled back one sheet of tarp to reveal vacuum-sealed sacks of rice, 5 kilograms per bag, stacked uniformly across 4 layers. Adjacent to the rice stood cases of bottled water, 24 bottles to a carton still marked with original factory labels. Digging deeper into the cargo, he found stacks of canned meals, compressed biscuits, instant noodles, assorted seasonings, 2 cartons of milk powder, and a large box of chocolate bars. Tucked into the corner of the container sat a small gasoline-powered generator plus a stack of empty fuel drums. This truck had clearly operated as a supply transport vehicle before the global collapse, its cargo preserved fully intact through the disaster. 20 minutes later, the RV's refrigerator was stuffed full. Beef tins, processed luncheon meat, dehydrated vegetable packs, powdered egg mix, milk powder, solid butter blocks, and several bottles of condiment sauces. The overhead storage cabinets held sacks of rice, compressed biscuits, instant noodles, bottled water, and 2 slabs of chocolate. He also retrieved a portable electric kettle from the truck's cargo to place atop the kitchen counter, perfectly suited for his onboard utilities. After securing the truck's container door once more, Gushin climbed back into the RV. The sky outside remained shrouded in perpetual gloom, but the warm cabin lighting and regulated air created a tangible buffer against the bleak darkness beyond the vehicle walls. He glanced at the induction cooktop built into his kitchen nook, then at the stocked refrigerator, and a thought crossed his mind. He had spent nearly an entire day confined to the RV, surviving solely on dry biscuits and cold water. Now he held ample provisions, unlimited clean power, and fully functional kitchen equipment. There was no reason not to cook a proper, warm meal for himself. Gushin walked over to the kitchen area and powered on the dual induction burners. Red indicator lights flared to life across the cooktop surfaces, reaching cooking temperature within a single second. From the fridge, he retrieved a can of beef, several packets of powdered egg, a bag of dehydrated vegetables, and a pack of instant noodles. He used a stainless steel pot scavenged from the truck, sized perfectly for a single serving. Once the water came to a boil, he dropped in the noodle block, stirred in the powdered egg mixture, added the dried vegetables, and poured the entire contents of the beef can into the pot. Steam curled upward steadily, blending the savory aroma of beef, seasoned broth, and subtle sweetness from the rehydrated vegetables throughout the compact cabin space. 3 minutes later, a steaming bowl of beef noodle soup rested on the unfolded dining table. Gushin sank into the fabric sofa and stared at the hot, steaming bowl for a long moment before picking up his chopsticks and taking the first bite. The noodles had an ideal texture, the broth thick and piping hot, the beef tender and well-seasoned. He leaned back against the sofa cushions and let out a slow, deep breath. This was the first hot meal he had eaten since being stranded in this apocalyptic wasteland. As he ate, he opened the system's public forum and scrolled through newly posted threads while chewing his food. The feed updated constantly with desperate messages from other survivors. I've gone a full day without proper food. Only found a half pack of expired crackers, and the leftover half upset my stomach. Not sure if I dare touch what's left. Anyone willing to trade gasoline for food? My vehicle is nearly out of fuel, but I have several packs of compressed biscuits. I'm trying to stock up on more fuel reserves. Located a supply cache up ahead, but 3 survivors are guarding it. I tried sneaking around the back to grab a single pack of instant noodles and got chased down 2 city blocks after being spotted. Just spotted a corpse beside the road with a bag of bread lying nearby. I didn't dare take it. The bag was covered in blood from the mutant attack that killed the person. Guys, I've had 0 water or food for 4 hours now. Does anyone know how much longer the incoming storm will take to reach our area? Saw a luxury vehicle drive past me a little while ago. I could see white steam rising from inside the windows. Someone was eating hot food. The smell alone was torture on an empty stomach. Begging for spare food of any kind. I can trade anything I own. Spare tires, gasoline, even weapons. I've got a fire axe stowed in my trunk. Gushin's chewing slowed as he continued scrolling the posts. He looked down at his own steaming beef noodle soup. The 2 chocolate bars and bottle of water set on his tabletop, the crammed refrigerator lined with canned goods and egg powder. Then his gaze drifted to the glowing silver infinity symbol displayed on the dashboard. Setting down his chopsticks, he navigated to the system trading marketplace and drafted a sales listing. For sale, 2 by 5 kilograms rice sacks, 2x cases 24-pack bottled water, 3x packs 10-piece compressed biscuits, for X packs 5 serving instant noodles. Payment accepted exclusively in survival points. After publishing the listing, he finished the rest of his soup, drinking down every last drop of broth. He settled back into the sofa as warm air wafted from the kitchen heating vents. The cabin was calm and cozy, cut off from the endless dark highway stretching outside his windows. Responses flooded his trade post moments later. Holy hell, someone is selling bulk food supplies? How did you find such an incredible stockpile? 5 serving instant noodle packs? I've scavenged 6 different sites and haven't found a single packet. Where exactly did you source these supplies? 2 full 5-kilogram rice sacks. I'm practically green with envy. I've been rationing my expired crackers down to tiny bites each day. I glance at my vehicle's empty fuel gauge, then look at your supply list, and I can barely hold back how jealous I am. A faint smile spread across Gushin's lips as he read through the comments. He made no rush to reply to any inquiries, instead washing his bowl and utensils before folding away the dining table to restore the sofa to its comfortable original state. He returned to the driver's seat, adjusted his seating position, set the cabin ambient lighting to soft warm yellow, and restarted the engine to resume his journey down the highway. The wrecked freight truck and the corpses of the 2 Rift Maws quickly vanished into the darkness in his rearview mirror. The gray asphalt highway stretched endlessly forward. Yet as Gushin took in his fully stocked refrigerator, functional kitchen counter, plush sofa, and thick latex mattress, paired with the unwavering infinity symbol on his dashboard, a profound sense of stable safety settled over him. He switched on the vehicle radio. The static-laced frequency he had tuned into earlier was still broadcasting an old, unfamiliar song. Its slow melody carried faint radio interference, yet the tune was strangely soothing. Gushin held his cruising speed steady at 70 kilometers per hour, resting one hand loosely on the steering wheel while the other propped against the open window frame. Gentle warmth filled the cabin, blending with the low hum of the refrigerator unit and the music drifting from the radio speakers. Darkness still cloaked the wilderness beyond the road. The deadly storm continued to close in from behind him, and countless dangers and unknown threats waited along the path ahead. But inside this modified RV, he had truly tasted what it meant to be alive for the very first time. Not merely clinging to bare survival, but living with warmth, sustenance, and genuine peace of mind. Gushin maintained his 70-kilometer speed as the old song cycled repeatedly on the radio. He reached for the tuning dial to switch frequencies when the vehicle's emergency alert abruptly cut through the broadcast, overriding the radio signal entirely. Regional emergency announcement. A special structure has been detected 120 kilometers forward, abandoned engineering laboratory. The facility has a high probability of containing LV.3 plus vehicle upgrade blueprints alongside rare modification modules. The building is projected to suffer total structural collapse in exactly 24 hours. All stored supplies within will be permanently destroyed upon collapse. Threat level: severe. Gushin's fingers froze above the radio dial, his eyes fixed on the coordinates and map marker that popped up on his display screen. An engineering laboratory. Blueprints for LV.3 and higher upgrades. Rare modification components. A 24-hour countdown timer. The system panel had flagged the requirement for advanced blueprints for his next vehicle upgrade the moment he unlocked LV.2 status. Now his objective had appeared, yet the path leading toward it would undoubtedly be fraught with peril. This emergency notice was pushed out to every surviving human within the region. 120 kilometers was a manageable distance. At his current driving speed, he would arrive in under 2 hours. However, such valuable rewards meant he would not be the sole survivor racing toward the laboratory. Coupled with the official severe threat level warning, the surrounding grounds were almost certainly inhabited by mutant creatures far deadlier than the Rift Maws he had already eliminated. Gushin muted the radio, repositioned his seat, and pulled up the full-screen navigation map. The designated route was clearly marked. Follow the main highway for roughly 100 kilometers before turning onto a side road. Then travel another 20 kilometers to reach the laboratory compound. He pressed down gently on the accelerator, raising his speed from 70 to 80 kilometers per hour. The infinity power symbol glowed steadily on the dashboard, the engine running seamlessly, and the reinforced RV remained quiet even at elevated driving speeds. An hour passed, and the landscape lining both sides of the highway began to shift. The flat, barren gray wasteland gave way to rolling low hills and dried riverbeds, with the road winding through undulating terrain. Gushin slowed his vehicle to scan his surroundings carefully. This uneven landscape created perfect natural cover for ambushes, drastically limiting long-distance visibility. He activated the roof-mounted searchlight at its widest beam setting to illuminate shadowed areas along the highway verges as thoroughly as possible. Further along the route, an abandoned off-road SUV sat parked on the road shoulder. Deep impact marks and savage claw gouges marred its exterior panels. The driver's door hung wide open with no occupants visible inside. Gushin did not reduce his speed, casting only a quick glance into the cabin. Dark dried blood stained the seat upholstery, and spent bullet casings littered the floor beneath the driver's seat. No living creatures or human corpses could be seen anywhere on the premises. He pressed onward, his grip tightening slightly around the steering wheel. 30 kilometers remained to the laboratory coordinates when a fork appeared in the highway. The main roadway continued straight into the distance, while a narrower side road branched right into the hilly wilderness. According to the map data, the laboratory stood at the end of this side passage. As Gushin prepared to make the turn onto the side road, an intense beam of white light suddenly flared from the darkness, directly into his windshield. A medium-sized modified cargo truck was parked dead center across the side road entrance. Its cab reinforced with crudely welded iron plating and topped with a searchlight slightly less powerful than the one on Gushin's RV. Two sedans were positioned behind the truck, forming a triangular blockade sealing off full access to the side path. Gushin slowed to a complete stop without killing the engine. His own searchlight swept over the truck's frame to reveal human figures moving within the cargo hold. The side door swung open shortly after, and a middle-aged man wrapped in a thick, heavy coat jumped down to the pavement. "The road ahead is blocked off," the man called out clearly despite his moderate speaking volume. Gushin cracked his window open by a narrow gap. "Blocked off? Who issued this blockade?" "We did." The man stepped forward a short distance, both hands tucked into his coat pockets, his relaxed posture carrying an underlying state of vigilant readiness. 4 separate survivor groups have already fought their way into the laboratory building. The place is a bloodbath inside, with bodies piling higher than vehicle wheels. I'd strongly advise you against venturing in there. Gushin held his response for a moment while analyzing their defensive formation. The large truck barred the main entry point, with the 2 sedans covering the flanks, an effective setup for sealing off the entire side road entrance. The iron armor plating welded onto the truck's exterior was rough and uneven along the seams, clearly a rushed field modification rather than professional fabrication work. "Are you posted here to turn travelers away, or to wait for updates from inside the facility?" Gushin asked. A subtle shift crossed the man's expression. The sharp angle of the question caught him off guard compared to the usual inquiries from passing survivors. He avoided a direct answer and countered with a question of his own. "Your vehicle is modified. It looks like an RV, but the armor plating doesn't match standard civilian builds." "It's modified," Gushin confirmed plainly. "I have reasons to enter the laboratory, clear a path, and my actions past this point are none of your concern." The middle-aged man fell silent for several seconds, glancing back toward the truck's driver compartment as if exchanging a silent signal with his companions inside. He then stepped sideways onto the road shoulder to create an opening. "Very well. This is your own choice. Do not blame us if disaster strikes after we've given you fair warning." He gestured down the side road with one hand. "Roughly 10 kilometers down this path, you'll spot a derelict multi-story building. That is the laboratory. At least 3 survivor factions are still fighting over supplies inside as we speak. Worse still, there is something lurking within the facility's underground basement levels." "What exactly is in the basement?" "No one who has gone down there has ever come back alive," the man replied in a flat, matter-of-fact tone, as if reciting a routine weather forecast. Gushin nodded acknowledgement and rolled his window shut. He engaged the gear and slowly navigated his RV through the narrow gap between the cargo truck and the road embankment to enter the side road. The pavement quality degraded sharply once he left the main highway, riddled with deep potholes and uneven surfaces. Low, withered scrub brush grew denser along the road edges, casting distorted, twisted shadows under his searchlight beam. He dropped his cruising speed to 40 kilometers per hour to account for the poor road conditions, while also remaining skeptical about the full truth behind the stranger's warning. Men such as these would not maintain a dangerous roadside blockade purely out of goodwill to warn strangers away from harm. If the laboratory was truly overrun with deadly infighting, they were undoubtedly waiting for something specific themselves. Gushin set the thought aside temporarily to focus fully on navigating the uneven roadway. After traveling another 8 kilometers down the side road, a faint warm yellow glow materialized in the pitch-black distance, resembling a single unmoving eye fixed along the roadside. Guhin slowed to 20 kilometers per hour and deactivated the roof searchlight, leaving only his low-beam headlights active. He identified the source of the light, a lone street lamp standing upright beside the road, its lampshade shattered on one side, yet the bulb still stubbornly burning. 2 vehicles were parked beneath the lamppost. A high-clearance off-road pickup truck fitted with a crudely sound-suppressed machine gun mounted in its cargo bed, alongside a small box van marked with spray-painted initials belonging to some organized survivor crew. 4 people stood beside the 2 vehicles. They had clearly noticed Gu Shun's approaching RV. One of them flashed a handheld signal light twice in a rhythmic pattern corresponding to a pre-arranged group code. Gu Shun did not reciprocate the signal. He had no knowledge of any faction codes, nor did he have any need to conceal his movement. He continued forward at a steady 20 kilometers per hour, granting the 4 men ample time to fully observe the silhouette and reinforced exterior of his RV. As he passed beneath the street lamp, one of the 4 men locked eyes with him, his gaze lingering noticeably on the dark gray composite armor covering the RV's hull before he looked away. Gu Shun kept moving forward, leaving the street lamp and the 4 figures fading into his rearview mirror. 1 kilometer further down the road, the silhouette of a large building emerged from the darkness, a 3-story flat-roofed concrete structure with most of its window frames broken and empty. He had reached the abandoned engineering laboratory. Gu Shun did not drive straight for the laboratory's main entrance. He killed the headlights and slowly circled toward the side of the building, concealed by the shadows cast by the rolling hills. The upgraded underbody armor and suspension system handled the rugged, pockmarked terrain flawlessly. The tires rolled over loose gravel and depressions with nothing more than dull thuds, keeping the vehicle's body virtually stable. He brought the RV to a halt roughly 50 meters behind the lab, its nose lined up with a half-raised freight roll-up door. Something was wedged beneath the door, leaving a gap barely a meter tall, just wide enough for the RV to squeeze through with tight clearance. No guards posted at this side entrance. Everyone inside was clearly locked in conflict around the main gate out front. Gu Shun cut the engine power but kept the vehicle's electrical systems online. He double-checked his armor integrity readings and the searchlight control panel, then retrieved a long crowbar from a kitchen drawer and set it on the passenger seat. A quick glance in the rearview mirror showed the 4 men by the street lamp had not pursued him, nor had the trucks blocking the road given chase. Perfect. If they planned to wait it out, he would not. Gu Shun restarted the engine, pressing firmly on the accelerator this time. The RV burst forth from the darkness, and the searchlight flared to life at the very last second. Its blinding white beams sliced through the night like a blade, locking onto the cracked roll-up door. The 50-meter stretch was covered in 3 seconds flat, the vehicle surging from a dead stop to 60 kilometers per hour. The overlapping scales of its composite armor hummed with faint vibrations as it sped forward, akin to the taut muscle fibers of a sprinting cheetah. Crash! The roll-up door buckled inward rather than shattering entirely. The front section of the armored RV rammed deep into the opening. Gu Shun felt the front end jolt upward briefly before the vehicle settled level once more. He had barreled straight into the laboratory's ground floor lobby. The searchlight swept across the wide open space that once housed reception desks and office workspaces, now reduced to utter ruin. Filing cabinets lay overturned across the floor, desks shoved haphazardly against walls, while bullet holes and corrosive stains from unknown substances marred every vertical surface. 3 separate groups occupied the lobby. The first pair consisted of 2 men in tactical vests kneeling beside an overturned metal cabinet, seemingly picking its lock. Both snapped their heads upward the instant the searchlight illuminated them, faces etched with raw shock. The second group had barricaded themselves around a corridor bend across the lobby, locked in a standoff against an unseen threat. Gu Shun only spotted several gun barrels protruding from behind the wall cover. The third presence was the corpses scattered across the floor, at least 3 bodies stripped clean of all supplies, their limbs twisted into unnatural poses. As the searchlight beam traced a wide arc and came to rest dead center of the lobby, Gu Shun laid eyes on a mutated creature marginally smaller than a hammer-tailed beast. Its form looked as though flesh and tissue had melted from the inside out before re-solidifying into a warped abomination, its indistinct frame coated in thick, oozing dark green fluid. A system notification materialized before his eyes. Elite class mutant. Corruptor. Threat level, high. Traits. Corrosive epidermal layer. Melee strikes inflict lingering acid erosion damage. Weakness. High-frequency energy blasts strip away outer skin, leaving the core body extremely vulnerable. Gu Shun lingered on the phrase high-frequency energy blasts, then glanced toward the silvery infinity symbol glowing on his dashboard. A synchronized alert popped up on the vehicle's central display. Infinite Power Core can simulate high-frequency pulse emissions. Maximum output is limited by the durability of connected hardware. Available equipment for repurposing. Searchlight array modifiable into a high-frequency pulse emitter. Modification would take time, and this was a hostile combat zone, not a dedicated repair bay. There was no time for meticulous adjustments. Bathed in the searchlight's glare, the Corruptor let loose a hoarse, gurgling roar and lumbered toward the RV. Its pace was unhurried, yet every footprint it left smoldered from the potent acid seeping off its body. The two men by the metal cabinet finally snapped out of their stupor. One raised his shotgun and fired directly at the monster. The shot blasted a shallow crater into the viscous green coating, which quickly flowed back to seal the wound without pause. The Corruptor did not falter for a heartbeat. It lashed out, hurling a glob of dark green slime toward the shooter. The man dodged too slowly. The substance splattered across his left arm, drawing an immediate, agonized scream. His uniform burned through instantly, his skin blistering and reddening visibly in real time. Gu Shun acted without hesitation. He slammed the vehicle into reverse and hit the gas, backing several meters to create safe distance from the Corruptor. Shifting back into drive, he circled a concrete support pillar with the RV, keeping the searchlight locked firmly on the creature the entire time. He was running a quick assessment, testing the monster's sensitivity to intense illumination. Hammer-tailed beasts tolerated strong light with discomfort. Smaller mutants reacted violently to brightness, and this Corruptor visibly slowed under the searchlight beam. Light harmed the beast, yet standard lighting intensity was insufficient to deliver meaningful damage. Gu Shun scanned the surrounding walls and spotted a half-open electrical control box tucked behind one pillar, its thick primary cable junctions exposed for easy access. Infinite power supply. High-frequency pulses. An output terminal ready to use. A viable plan solidified in his mind. Gu Shun floored the gas pedal, speeding along the perimeter wall past the Corruptor straight for the electrical box. He threw open the driver's door and jumped out, yanking the cabinet fully open to reveal bare live cable terminals inside. Pulling on industrial insulating gloves, he unspooled a heavy-duty extension cord from the RV's external power port. He stripped the copper wiring at its terminal end and tightly wound the exposed conductors around the lab's main power cables. He sprinted back into the driver's seat, swiped across the central touchscreen to pull up the external power controls. Switching the default safety cutoff mode over to the newly unlocked pulse mode. Warning: pulse operation may cause permanent, irreparable damage to connected hardware. Confirm activation? Confirm. The moment Gu Shun tapped the confirmation prompt, a low thunderous arc discharge boomed from within the electrical cabinet. Surge after surge of high-frequency pulsed current flooded outward from the RV's infinite core, racing down the extension cord into the building's wiring infrastructure. This was not stable alternating current, but jagged, rhythmic energy pulses that made every overhead lamp in the lobby flicker erratically. Driven by the pulsed power, the searchlight intensified drastically, its white light shifting into a searing pale blue glow with exponentially amplified luminosity. The Corruptor stood directly in the beam's path. The pale blue pulse slammed into its body, boiling and blistering the thick green outer layer. The Corruptor unleashed an ear-splitting shriek, its entire frame convulsing violently as layer upon layer of corrosive slue fell away. A second pulse struck home, shrinking the creature's overall mass noticeably. A third blast forced it to its forelimbs, nearly half its protective epidermal covering stripped away to reveal a pale gray, fleshy core underneath. Gu Shun cut the pulse output. He pushed open the vehicle door, grabbed his long crowbar, and strode toward the wounded mutant on foot. The Corruptor knelt trembling on the concrete floor, tattered scraps of its green outer skin hanging loosely from its bodily structure. It let out a weak wheeze upon seeing Gu Shun approach, but lacked the strength to mount any counterattack. Gu Shun raised the crowbar high and brought it crashing down hard against the exposed pale core beneath the creature's cranial region. A sharp cracking sound echoed out. The Corruptor's body stiffened rigidly for an instant before collapsing into a pile of fine ash and inert biological debris. System alerts popped into view. Elite class mutant, Corruptor eliminated. Survival points earned, 600. Obtain ×1 elite core rare crafting material, compatible with Tier 3 vehicle modifications. A heavy silence blanketed the lobby for a heartbeat. The faint pale blue afterglow of the searchlight lingered across the walls. The two men beside the metal cabinet slowly got to their feet. The man in the tactical vest still gripped his shotgun, barrel angled toward the ground. His companion clutched his burned left arm, face drained of color as he gasped for ragged breaths. You. The shotgun wielder stared at Gushan, then gestured toward the smoldering pile of monster remains. How did you pull that off? That light. Gushan offered no explanation. He bent to pick up the cold spherical elite core from the ground, the system verifying the acquisition. Tucking the core into his pocket, he turned to head back toward his RV. Hold on. The man raised his voice sharply. You got in through that side roll-up door? No guards blocking the outer perimeter. Gushan glanced back over his shoulder. There were patrols further out. You entered through the main entrance. The man's jaw tightened, offering no verbal denial. He shot a wary glance toward the corridor bend and pressed his lips into a thin, tense line. We came in as a group of 5 originally. 2 got cut down right at the front gates. Another died further down that corridor. He nodded toward his injured comrade. This one got splashed by that monster's acid gunk. It's just the 2 of us left now. Gushan followed his gaze to the corridor corner, where 3 gun barrels still peeked out, the shooters locked in a fraught standoff. What are they fighting back there? Your guess is as good as mine. The man's tone dropped into a murmur. When we charged inside, gunfire was already echoing down the corridor. Those 3 holed up at the bend, firing blindly inward afterward, so we didn't dare advance. Then that abomination wandered out and chased us all the way back. Gushan pieced together the scattered clues. Multiple scavenger teams that breached the main entrance had run into an unknown threat. The corruptor had wandered out from the lab's inner chambers to herd the remaining survivors into the lobby, only to be incinerated by his pulsed light weaponry. Whatever dwelled deeper within the corridor remained unseen and unidentified. Gushan began walking toward the corridor junction. The shotgun man shouted a warning that he was reckless to proceed, which Gushan ignored entirely. The 3 defenders at the corner spun toward him the moment they heard approaching footsteps. At the front stood a sharp-featured woman with short-cropped hair. You entered via the side access? The woman swept her eyes over Gushan's figure from head to toe. We saw the commotion back here. You killed that corrosive beast. Affirmative. Gushan stopped at the corridor edge, peering past her shoulders into the passage stretching onward. The corridor extended roughly 20 meters, terminating at a set of double-reinforced metal doors marked with faded red hazard warning signage. Bullet impacts, scorch marks, and dried splatters of thick viscous fluid stained both corridor walls, while 3 corpses lay face down across the floor. What's behind those doors? Gushan asked. We halted our advance right here. The woman gestured toward the fallen bodies. These 3 were the first group to push inside. All died from identical wounds. Gushan fixed his stare on the sealed metal doors. A faint, steady green glow seeped out through the thin crack between the door panels. He had the pulse-augmented searchlight, his steel crowbar, and his fully armored RV parked safely in the lobby. Unfortunately, the narrow 2-meter-wide corridor was far too cramped for the vehicle to navigate inward. How long have you maintained this defensive position? Nearly 20 minutes. She checked her wristwatch. The interior went dead silent roughly 10 minutes ago, but that green glow never faded. Gushan frowned. For 20 minutes, while the lobby group struggled against the corruptor, the situation within the inner lab chamber had shifted drastically. He knelt down to pick up a spent bullet casing, twisting it between his fingers. Minor corrosion marred the casing edges. I'm going to investigate inside. The woman regarded him as though he were volunteering to walk straight into a lethal trap. Are you certain? Those 3 corpses are clear proof of the danger waiting within. Gushan shifted the crowbar into his left hand and closed his right palm around the elite core tucked in his pocket. My armored RV is stationed in the lobby with heavy defensive plating. If whatever is behind those doors charges outward, fall back behind the vehicle cover. The woman raised an eyebrow, recognizing the weight behind his assurance. She asked no further questions, stepping aside to create a clear path for him to pass. Gushan advanced into the corridor. His footsteps echoed sharply against the confined walls. Corrosive residue grew denser the deeper he walked. He reached the metal doors and pressed his palm against the cold metal surface. No anomalous heat signatures emanated from within. Gripping the door handle firmly, he drew in a slow breath and pushed the door open. A stream of emerald light flooded outward through the gap. Gushan slipped sideways into the room, and the sight that greeted him instantly invalidated every theory he had formulated up to that point. The chamber spanned roughly 30 to 40 square meters, dominated by a large active experimental unit tangled with thick and thin bundles of wiring. Strings of unreadable data flickered constantly across the unit's display screen, the source of that pervasive green luminescence. The chamber floor was empty. No corpses, blood splatters, or signs of physical combat anywhere to be seen. Yet 3 people had perished out in the corridor with their backs fatally impaled. If the killer had struck from inside this chamber, it should still be present within these 4 walls. Gu Xin scanned the ceiling, nothing out of place. He checked every shadowed corner, completely vacant. His gaze drifted down to the floor. A dark, wet puddle had pooled beneath the experimental hardware, spreading outward at an extremely sluggish pace. He whipped around abruptly. The doors stood open behind him, the silhouettes of the 3 defenders visible in the corridor alongside the warm glow cast by his RV's searchlight in the lobby. Everything appeared normal at first glance. But the puddle on the floor accelerated its spread, flowing steadily toward the doorway where he stood. A critical detail suddenly dawned on him. The fatal wounds had been inflicted through the victims' backs, yet all 3 bodies lay face down on the corridor ground when he passed by moments earlier. Whatever had pierced their backs had struck from directly above. Gu Xin snapped his head upward. Half the metal grating covering a ceiling ventilation shaft had broken loose and fallen away. The shaft's interior was pitch black, save for a faint glimmer deep within its shadowed recesses. The creature that murdered the 3 intruders had retreated back into the ventilation duct after the kill, and it was still hiding there now. Gu Xin retreated one slow, careful step without breaking eye contact with the damaged vent opening. His right hand drifted toward the elite core in his pocket, left hand tightening around the crowbar's grip. 2 slender, lidless pupils materialized in the vent's darkness, fixated unblinkingly on his position. Gu Xin held perfectly still, regulating his breathing to the shallowest possible rhythm while locking his gaze onto those alien eyes in the vent. The pupils did not move an inch, the exposed eyeballs frozen with the unnerving stillness of an ambush predator coiled within shadow, waiting for its prey to make the first careless misstep. A realization settled over Gu Xin. The creature had already eliminated the 3 humans who broke into this chamber and could have easily dropped down to attack him the moment he entered. It had chosen not to strike immediately. It lingered at the vent opening, observing and sizing him up from behind the broken grating, gauging his threat level cautiously. What reason held it back? Gu Xin swept his eyes across the room once more, finally fixing on the operational experimental unit at the chamber's center. Data streams continued to scroll across its screen, the green field emission stable and unchanging. The vent opening sat directly above the machinery. The 3 victims had fled outward into the corridor after entering the room, only to be slain mid-retreat. Gu Xin currently stood inside the chamber adjacent to the experimental device, and the monster refused to descend. A tentative hypothesis took shape in his mind. The creature inhabited the ventilation network, but actively avoided entering this chamber. Its restraint stemming entirely from the experimental hardware. Why would the machine repel it? Gu Xin examined the faded labels stuck to the unit casing. Most lettering was worn illegible, yet several key phrases remained discernible. Biological field damping, waveform generator, test subject suppression. Suppression. The pieces clicked into place. This laboratory had once utilized the machine to contain mutated creatures housed within the facility. The green light was not illumination. It was an actively projected suppression waveform field. The beast avoided descending into the room because its primitive instincts recoiled from the field's influence. It may have lost conscious memory of the waveform's effects over prolonged captivity, yet the ingrained physiological reflex forged through countless suppressions remained etched into its body. Gu Xin sidestepped slowly toward the experimental unit. The pupils in the vent tracked his movements subtly, though the creature still refused to emerge from the ductwork. He took another small step, positioning himself squarely beside the machine so the hardware stood as a physical barrier between his body and the vent opening above. The pupils vanished entirely. The creature retreated deeper into the ventilation shaft. Gu Xin did not relax his vigilance for a single second. He quickly scanned the control panel displays. Most technical parameters scrolling across the screen were incomprehensible to him, but a flashing icon in the bottom right corner marked a system-accessible data port. He tapped the icon with his fingertip. A system notification appeared instantly. Experimental data storage module detected. Initiate data extraction. Estimated read time, 90 seconds. Maintain stable module connection during retrieval. Gu Xin glanced back toward the ventilation shaft. No pupils were visible any longer, yet the heavy sensation of being watched lingered faintly in the air. 90 seconds was a gamble he had to take. Initiate extraction, he muttered quietly. Data transmission commenced. The green display light on the experimental unit began flickering at an accelerated frequency, and faint scraping noises echoed from deep within the ventilation ducts as the unseen creature shifted position through the metal tunnels, still unwilling to draw near the suppression field. Roughly 40 seconds later, the short-haired woman's voice echoed down the corridor. What's going on in there? Are you all right? Still breathing. Gushin did not turn his head. Give me another minute. At the 50th second, scraping noises inside the ventilation duct morphed into rhythmic tapping, as if some creature was rapping its claw tips against the metal piping. Gushin's gaze stayed fixed on the vent opening, his thumb bearing down hard on the pry bar's handle until his knuckles blanched white. On the 60th second, the tapping cut off abruptly. Right after, a low, drawn-out hiss drifted from deep within the duct, identical to steam leaking from a high-pressure pipeline. By the 70th second, the hiss drew dangerously near. Gushin watched a claw creep over the vent's rim. Its hue blended seamlessly with the rust coating the duct walls, fitted with long, curved talons and twice as many joints as any ordinary living being. The claw clamped tight onto the vent edge, and a head poked out from the pitch-black darkness beyond. The progress bar on the instrument's screen read 87%. The head bore a vague human shape, yet possessed warped proportions, an elongated skull, a protruding jaw, and pale, translucent skin that laid its blood vessels and muscle fibers plainly visible beneath the surface. It had no nose, only two flat indentations. Where eyes should have sat slitted pupils blown wide open, their irises clouded amber. The creature locked its stare onto Gushin and split its mouth open. No teeth lined its maw. Instead, concentric fine-ridged rings lined the interior, resembling some kind of filtration organ. Gushin held perfectly still beside the device, maintaining a safe gap between himself and the monster. The progress bar ticked up to 91%. More of the creature's head emerged slowly from the vent, followed by an ashen gray neck crisscrossed with folded annular skin. Its torso was slender, serpentine, skin stretched taut over its skeleton to lay every vertebra sharply defined. 95%. The front half of the entity had fully slipped out of the vent, hanging upside down less than 2 meters above the ground. Its amber eyes rolled faintly, seemingly reassessing the dynamic between Gushin and the analytical equipment. 98%. A faint hiss cut through the air. The creature exhaled a cloud of transparent mist straight toward him. The mist spread with terrifying speed, flooding the space between Gushin and the device in under half a second. Gushin dodged sideways on instinct. The mist grazed his right shoulder, immediately coating his jacket with a layer of fine white foam. The fabric grew brittle and began to crumble away piece by piece. Corrosive breath. Limited range, but lethally fast-acting. 100%. Data extraction complete. A system notification popped up. Experimental data retrieved. Rewards. Complete LV.3 vehicle body structure upgrade blueprint ×1. Temporary laboratory access credential ×1. Warning, instrument power depleted. Suppression waveform field will collapse in 3 seconds. Are you kidding me? Gushin felt he had been trapped by the system's design. He paid no mind to the newly acquired rewards as raw survival instinct surged forth. The moment the extraction finished, he seized the equipment's frame and hauled it backward hard. Rollers fitted to the device's base let him drag it with ease. He retreated step by step, using the machine as a physical shield between himself and the abomination. The creature slid fully out of the ventilation shaft, landing on the floor without the faintest sound. Measuring around 2.5 meters in total length, it had spindly limbs anchored by bulky joints. Its foreclaws dug into the concrete floor the second it touched down. Amber pupils locked unwaveringly onto Gushin. Gushin dragged the instrument backward until he reached the doorway, squeezed out sideways, and slammed the metal door shut. The instant the panel sealed, the monster's claws jammed through the narrow crack, talons screeching harshly as they raked across the steel surface. Gushin made no attempt to lock the door. The force visible in those claw strikes told him locks would be useless. He was not foolish enough to test his strength against the beast. He spun and sprinted down the corridor, shouting over his shoulder. "It's loose. Stand ready." The short-haired woman raised her shotgun the second she heard the shout, while her two companions quickly assumed firing stances. Gushin rounded the corridor bend just as a deafening crack tore through the air behind him. The metal door was ripped clean off its frame and crashed heavily onto the hallway floor. The entity stepped out through the empty doorframe. Bathed in the hall's harsh overhead lights, its ashen body was fully exposed. It scuttled forward with spider-like, interleaving limb movements, moving faster than the human eye could properly track. The hunting rifle fired. A bullet struck its right forelimb, blowing open a small patch of gray flesh. Yet not a single drop of fluid oozed from the wound. The creature only paused for less than half a second before resuming its advance at undiminished speed, clearly enraged by Gu Xun's escape. The rifle rounds failed to halt its charge. A man armed with a shotgun sprinted across the main hall toward the corridor mouth. He raised his weapon mid-sprint and pulled the trigger without hesitation. 12-gauge shot pellets detonated inside the narrow corridor entrance, showering the faceless one's upper body with a storm of steel beads. The pellets tore open large gashes across its gray skin, revealing a faint, glossy, translucent membrane underneath. The blast did not deal fatal damage, yet it forced the monster to stagger backward a single step. Its foreclaws bit deep into the floor to anchor its recoiling frame. "Fall back!" Gu Xun roared toward the short-haired woman's group. "Retreat to my vehicle." The woman did not waste time questioning the order. All three pulled back in unison, firing steadily as they retreated. Though their combined firepower was not overwhelming, the alternating blasts of shotgun and rifle fire wove a persistent wall of lead blocking the faceless one's path. Gu Xun turned and ran for his modified RV, threw open the driver's door, and slid behind the wheel. His fingers flew across the central control panel, switching the roof's searchlight system to pulse mode. After his previous encounter with corrupted mutants, the system had retained this configuration, completing the switch in merely 2 seconds. A brilliant pale blue light flared to life, though Gu Xun held back from cranking the output to maximum power this time around. The beam streaked across the hall, passing safely over the retreating survivors and striking dead center at the corridor mouth. The faceless one's body burned under the pulsing luminescence, tiny charred marks blooming across its skin as if licked by invisible flames. It let out a shrill, piercing shriek, not the heavy rumble of the hammer-tailed beast, but a high-pitched whine akin to an overloaded short-circuited power cable. The monster retreated into the corridor proper, pressing its body flat against the wall to evade direct contact with the light beam. "Cut the beam," the short-haired woman yelled. "It's pulled back. Don't keep it active. Conserve power." She had no way of knowing his vehicle possessed an endless power supply. Gu Xun dimmed the light output, but kept it partially active to secure the hall for everyone present. The harsh blue glow faded to a soft warm white, bright enough to illuminate the area without draining the vehicle's hardware durability unnecessarily. Those thin amber pupils flickered briefly within the corridor's shadowed depths before vanishing completely into the deeper blackness further inside. A heavy silence settled over the hall for several heartbeats. The shotgun wielder kept his weapon trained toward the corridor entrance, gasping for air heavily. Beside him, a comrade clutched a burn wound on his arm. His lips were drained of color, yet his gaze remained sharp and alert. The short-haired woman lowered her firearm and glanced toward Gu Xun's RV, her gaze lingering on the powerful roof-mounted searchlight for a long moment. She said nothing, only sent a pointed look toward the driver's cabin. Gu Xun stayed seated behind the wheel, his eyes still fixed on the dark corridor mouth, right hand resting on the control panel with his thumb hovering just above the searchlight activation switch. "It's retreated for now, but it won't stay gone long," Gu Xun stated. "Check your people for injuries." The woman glanced back at her team. The rifleman and another companion who had maintained a vigilant defensive posture without firing a single shot both shook their heads to signal they were unharmed. The corridor skirmish had been swift and brief. All three had taken cover while shooting, escaping direct physical harm. "We're unhurt," the woman replied. "What about you?" Gu Xun glanced down at his right shoulder. The white corrosive foam on his jacket had stopped spreading, eating only a coin-sized hole through the outer fabric. A dull burning sensation pricked his skin beneath the torn material, similar to a splash of strong chili solution, but the damage had not pierced through to raw flesh. "Minor corrosion damage. Won't hinder my movement." Their eyes met in a fleeting exchange. The short-haired woman then strode toward the RV's driver's side window. "What did you retrieve from that sealed room? I'm willing to trade supplies for any valuable loot you picked up. No lone wolf survives long in the apocalypse." She leaned close to the window, clearly aiming to recruit this bold, capable survivor with enviable luck. Gu Xun withheld an immediate answer. He pulled the system-acquired access credential from his pocket and twirled it between his fingertips. The materialized credential hovered as a translucent, glowing card in midair, emblazoned with the words, "Temporary Access," alongside strings of system authentication codes. "An access pass for the laboratories inside this building," he said, pausing afterward. He chose not to mention the LV.3 vehicle upgrade blueprint. hide valuable gains in plain sight. Even if they suspected he had obtained more rewards, only Gu Shin knew the full extent of his haul. The group needed his assistance for their own objectives and would not risk open hostilities for the time being. But your actions released the creature. The woman finished his sentence for him. We held position outside the corridor while the analytical device was operational. Once you tampered with the equipment and the suppression waveform collapsed, the entity hiding inside the ventilation system broke free. Gu Shin offered no defense. Her assessment was largely accurate. He had been left with no viable alternatives at the time. Retrieving the critical blueprint had been his sole reason for venturing into the facility in the first place. I'm not here to assign blame. I want to propose an alliance instead, the woman stated firmly. When my team first entered this complex, we numbered 6. Only 3 of us remain now. I won't leave this place empty-handed. What are you after? The second floor houses a storage zone marked on our system map as a warehouse stocked with high-grade vehicle modification materials. The door requires authorized access to unlock. She continued her explanation. My men had nearly reached the warehouse before a corrupted mutant ambushed us midway. That threat is eliminated now, and while the faceless one lurks nearby, I've located an alternate route. My team can circle around via the fire staircase to reach the second floor. Gu Shin studied her closely. A fresh abrasion crusted with dried blood marked the back of her hand, yet her expression stayed utterly composed. He weighed the risks and benefits of her proposal carefully. The shotgun-wielding man crossed the hall to approach the RV, his tense battle demeanor softening slightly. He ignored Gu Shin's face, instead inspecting the matte gray reinforced armor plating covering the RV's hull, evaluating its structural integrity with quiet curiosity. Thanks back there. The man spoke in a rough, smoke-roughened voice, his tone earnest without being overly warm or friendly. If that blue light had been even a few seconds slower, that thing would have lunged straight for my face. I owe you thanks for covering me during the fight, Gu Shin responded. Just mutual survival aid, nothing more. The man shook his head, then extended his right hand in a gesture of truce. I'm Jiang Tai. This is Lao Zhao beside me. Earlier, when we were prying open supply lockers, I'd wondered if any other living humans were trapped in this derelict building. Turns out you're one of the few. Gu Shin shook his hand for 2 seconds before releasing his grip. Jiang Tai knelt to check his teammate's bandaged arm burned before straightening up. He glanced toward the short-haired woman, then back at Gu Shin, his gaze sweeping from the armored RV to the shadowed corridor entrance as he evaluated the current dangerous situation. No sounds emanated from deep within the corridor, yet the memory of those glowing amber eyes weighed heavy on every survivor present. The monster had retreated not out of fear, but to lie in wait for a better opening to strike. Gu Shin brushed his thumb lightly across the glowing access credential and voiced his decision. How much time will your team need to reach the warehouse via that fire staircase? The woman replied without hesitation. Circle around through a fire door on the hall's west side to enter the stairwell. Once on the second floor, a short connecting passage leads directly to the warehouse complex. 15 minutes round trip, not including time spent looting materials. 15 minutes, Gu Shin repeated. I will hold the faceless one off for that window of time. Hand over the access pass to your group. Secure your supplies and leave immediately upon finishing your retrieval. No unnecessary detours, no greed-driven delays. I get an equal share of whatever materials you collect. Deal. The woman agreed without redundant negotiation. Jiang Tai shot a glance at Lao Zhao, who nodded his assent. Both men were clearly willing to abide by this division of labor. Jiang Tai gestured toward the far wall of the hall. 2 more survivors took cover behind overturned cabinets earlier. They should still be mobile. I'll fetch them to join our group. He hurried across the hall, and moments later 2 figures, a man and a woman, ordinary unarmed survivors, stood up from behind the debris and walked over to join the woman's squad after a brief conversation with Jiang Tai. 5 people in total. The short-haired woman led the group, with Jiang Tai covering their rear guard. They circled wide away from the monster-infested corridor and headed for the fire door. The echo of their footsteps faded gradually as they vanished into the stairwell. Seated in the RV cockpit, Gu Shin reactivated the pulse searchlight into standby mode. He checked the time, pulled up a countdown timer on his system interface, then leaned back into the driver's seat, his gaze locked firmly onto the pitch-black corridor mouth. 15 minutes. A faint, steady sound, almost indistinguishable from slow breathing, drifted out of the corridor's darkness. The faceless one had not abandoned its hunt for Gu Shin. 15 minutes stretched ahead. Gu Shin adjusted his seat for a more relaxed posture. He set the dashboard timer to count down from 900 seconds, the glowing red numerals stark against the dim cabin lighting. Those amber eyes still lingered in the corridor depths, unblinking and stationary, hanging in the shadows like an unstable explosive waiting to detonate at any moment. Bored with idle waiting, Gu Shun decided to provoke the creature to pass the time. "Hey, can you hear me talking?" No response came from the dark. "Can't hear a word, huh? Let me introduce myself. My name is Gu Shun. I travel in this armored RV with an unlimited power source. Do you have a designation? A lab number assigned to you by the researchers who locked you away." The pupils within the darkness narrowed slightly, visibly irritated by his voice. "You were given a numerical identifier, weren't you? Forgotten it after years locked in that tiny chamber, bathed nonstop in that sick green glow from the suppression machine. Hard to keep track of numbers under those conditions." A low, sharp hiss echoed outward from the corridor, thick with unbridled irritation. "Calm down now." One hand rested loosely on the steering wheel while the other hovered near the searchlight controls. "I never intended to shut that suppression device off. It ran out of power on its own. There was nothing I could do to prevent it. Tell me, how many years were you trapped in that containment chamber?" The hiss rose sharply in volume, sending dust showering down from the corridor's ceiling tiles. Gu Shun could feel a faint tremor vibrate up through the vehicle floorboards beneath his feet. "Seems I touched a painful memory. You remember that small room and the green light beating down on you day and night, correct?" He stole a quick glance at the rearview mirror. The RV's rear end faced directly toward the corridor entrance, granting him an immediate escape route via reverse acceleration if needed. That machine stood rigid in the center of your cell, flooding every inch of your space with unrelenting green radiation. Must have been pure torment. Another venomous hiss rumbled forth. "No rest for you, was there?" Every flicker of conscious thought was smothered by the suppression field. You could not twitch a single muscle, forced to hide within the ventilation shafts and wait for the equipment to inevitably fail. A sheet of plaster crumbled off the ceiling above the corridor mouth and shattered across the floor. The glowing amber eyes advanced roughly half a meter forward, a partial outline of the monster's body now faintly visible along the boundary of the hall's illumination. "Planning to attack me? By all means take your time. I've got nowhere to rush for the next 15 minutes. Though his tone remained casual, Gu Shun's thumb never strayed far from the pulse beam trigger, ready to fire the instant the creature moved to strike. The faceless one crept forward another slow step. Half its torso now rested at the edge of the lit hall, its pale gray skin semi-translucent under the warm white searchlight glow. Gu Shun spotted a critical detail. The lacerations torn open by Jiang Tai's shotgun pellets had already fully healed, leaving only a faint pink scar across its hide. Exceptionally rapid regenerative capabilities. He wondered how much damage the pulse light burns had already mended. "Recovered that quickly? I'd hoped to admire the damage my allies managed to inflict on you." As he continued speaking casually, his mind raced to process the new information. The pulsed searchlight could wound the monster, yet its accelerated healing factor rendered prolonged light-based attrition ineffective as a viable tactic. Gu Shun spoke aloud again. "You never dared approach your containment chamber while the suppression machine was active, isn't that right?" The creature froze in place. That device projected a biological damping waveform engineered specifically to subdue experimental entities like yourself, wasn't it? It held its ground, for claws digging hard into the floor as its body sank into a low, coiled predatory stance. Does the waveform only suppress your kind, or do other lab-bred abominations also suffer its effects? The hiss abruptly escalated into a piercing shriek. The faceless one launched itself out of the corridor in a lightning-fast lunge, its limbs scrabbling against the floor so rapidly it left motion after images in Gu Shun's vision. Gu Shun had been fully prepared for this charge. The moment he finished his last question, his thumb slammed down onto the searchlight trigger. The pulse beam erupted outward at nearly the same velocity as the charging monster, the brilliant blue-white ray washing over the junction between the corridor and main hall. Gu Shun wrenched the steering wheel hard right at maximum reaction speed. The rear reinforced armor plating of the RV whipped sideways, slamming bodily into the faceless one's midsection in a brutal head-on collision. A dull heavy thud resounded through the hall. The creature was sent flying sideways by the armored impact, tumbling twice across the concrete floor, while its claws scraped 4 deep gouges into the solid surface. Gu Shun felt a violent jolt run through the vehicle. Several fresh scratch marks marred the rear armor plating, yet the structural integrity only sustained minor damage. The faceless one clambered back to its feet with alarming speed, though it did not lunge forward immediately. It halted beside a hall pillar, its amber irises swiveling slowly as it alternated its gaze between Gu Shun and the corridor. The creature was hesitating. Evidently possessing considerable intelligence, it weighed its options. Either keep attacking Gu Shun, a tough opponent to take down, or retreat deeper into the corridor to bide its time for a more favorable opening. Then it made a decision that caught Gu Shun completely off guard. Instead of charging him or falling back, the faceless one's body abruptly elongated. It hooked its forelimbs onto a load-bearing pillar inside the hall, pushed hard with its hind legs, and shot upward, scaling 8 meters up the pillar's surface like a colossal gecko. Gu Shun tilted his head upward and watched it cling to the overhead crossbeams of the hall. Its ash-gray form blended almost seamlessly into the shadows, with only those pair of amber pupils still locked firmly onto his position. It then scuttled rapidly along the beams, heading straight for the side of the hall. Gu Shun cursed under his breath. The firewall was positioned on that side, the exact route Su Che and the others had taken. The monster retained its memories of being trapped inside the laboratory, and it had never forgotten the torment endured there. It had abandoned its fight with Gu Shun entirely. Perhaps the human who had seized the lab access credentials had been its true target all along. Gu Shun slammed his foot onto the gas pedal. The armored RV whipped into a sharp turn toward the hall's side wall, its searchlight beam tracking the pale gray figure traversing the rafters above. The faceless one moved with astounding swiftness, far more agile clambering across overhead structures than running along the ground. It wove unimpeded through ceiling pipes and wiring harnesses without the slightest pause. Gu Shun spotted the fire door up ahead. Su Che's group had just vanished into the stairwell, leaving a narrow gap of roughly 15 centimeters between the door and its frame. The faceless one was clearly aiming for that opening. It paused briefly at the end of the beam, dug its claws deep into the woodwork, and launched itself in a flying leap toward the fire door. Gu Shun mashed the pulse trigger without hesitation. A streak of pale blue-white energy caught the creature mid-air and struck its torso dead-on. A shrill screech tore from the faceless one's throat as its body contorted violently in midair. It crashed against the wall beside the fire door instead of slipping through the narrow crack. It rolled across the floor before regaining its footing, twisting its head to glare straight at Gu Shun. For the first time, Gu Shun could read raw emotion within those amber eyes, unbridled fury. Every shred of its previous patience burned away completely. Switch targets, Gu Shun said coldly. Come on then. I've got more than enough power to spare. He quickly tapped through commands on the central control panel, switching the external power supply mode from standby to active output. He tossed a frayed industrial extension cord out the vehicle window, its exposed copper wiring coiling loosely across the concrete floor. He pressed the pulse trigger once more, this time holding it down for a sustained, uninterrupted discharge. The blue-white energy beam lashed out like a glowing whip, sweeping across the side of the hall. The faceless one darted frantically to evade the beam, letting out pained shrieks each time the energy seared its flesh, leaving fresh charred wounds across its ash-gray hide. Still, it refused to retreat. It darted back and forth along the hall wall, using pillars and overturned furniture for cover as it strove to close the distance to the fire door. The creature was unervingly persistent, but with Gu Shun standing in its way, it would never reach its objective. Gu Shun maneuvered the RV in wide loops across the open hall space, keeping the searchlight trained to suppress the monster while positioning the vehicle's hull to block off access to the fire door. He glanced at the countdown timer. 7 minutes remaining. A pale gray blur suddenly lunged from the flank. The attack came so fast his eyes could barely track the movement before a massive impact slammed into the RV's right side panel. The force tilted the vehicle nearly 10 degrees to the left before it crashed heavily back onto its tires. Gu Shun was thrown against the steering wheel by the brutal jolt and fought to steady the vehicle immediately. 4 deep, vertical gashes scored the exterior armor plating on the right window, cutting clean through the outer layer to expose the underlying metal framework. This beast boasted far greater brute strength than any corrupted abomination he had encountered before. Gu Shun spun the steering wheel hard, rotating the RV roughly 180 degrees to face the faceless one head-on. At point-blank range, the blue-white pulse blast hammered into the creature's body, sending it flying backward several meters. Even so, the faceless one dug its claws into the ground the moment it landed, anchoring itself to halt its backward momentum instantly. It lifted its head, its amber pupils locking with Gu Shun's gaze through the windshield. A dry, bitter smirk tugged at Gu Shun's lips. Aren't you ever getting tired? The faceless one offered no verbal response. Instead, its body began to mutate visibly. Its pale gray skin darkened to a deep charcoal gray. The claws on all four limbs stretched to twice their original length, glinting with a mineral-like sheen. The ring of ridged tissue surrounding its mouth flared outward, revealing layered internal anatomical structures hidden beneath. This monster possessed a second combat form. Guhin drew a deep breath and floored the accelerator fully. The RV barreled straight toward the faceless one. The pulse searchlight led the charge with its blue-white energy, and the charcoal-gray abomination collided violently with the vehicle within the confined space along the hull's side wall. The impact sent the faceless one hurtling backward. Guhin brought the RV to a halt and checked the timer again. 5 minutes left. He gasped heavily, his chest heaving with exertion. When he raised his head toward the fire door, a faint shaft of light seeped through the gap, flashlight illumination drawing closer from the stairwell. Suche and her team were heading back. The fire door creaked open. Suche stepped out first, carrying a bulging tactical backpack slung over one shoulder with a rolled bundle of metal mesh fastened to its shoulder strap. Taijiang followed closely behind her, hoisting a long rectangular metal crate marked with official laboratory branding, its seal strip still fully intact and unbroken. Lao Zhao and 2 other survivors brought up the rear, each loaded with newly scavenged supplies. Their footsteps hurried yet controlled. Suche instantly registered the ongoing battle by the hull wall. The faceless one had just picked itself up after being rammed by the RV, its charcoal gray exterior coated in a dark glazed sheen under the dim ambient lighting. "Get moving!" Guhin shouted out the rolled-down window. "Board the vehicle now." Suche did not hesitate. She tossed a quick hand signal to Taijiang, and the 5 people circled around to the RV's side door in unison. Taijiang hauled the metal crate into the passenger compartment before squeezing himself inside. Lao Zhao and the 2 survivors filed into the living area one after another, the cramped space instantly growing packed with bodies. Suche climbed aboard last, slamming the side door shut with a sharp click as the locking mechanism engaged. Guhin pressed the accelerator to its limit. The RV surged forward, swerving around central support pillars and racing toward the exterior side gate he had crashed through earlier. The faceless one had fully recovered from the collision. Its reshaped charcoal gray frame looked far more compact, its claw tips thick as human fingers and shimmering with a hard crystalline luster. It spotted the RV speeding away and gave chase at once, its forepaws tearing across the floor and spraying loose gravel in its wake with every stride. Guhin checked the rearview mirror. The passenger cabin was obscured from view, only a dark gray shape rapidly closing the distance behind the vehicle. 150 meters remained to the exit gate, and the faceless one was accelerating steadily, shrinking the gap between hunter and vehicle by the second. Guhin steered with one hand while adjusting settings on the control panel with the other. He switched the searchlight from pulsed combat mode to standard illumination and tilted the lamp assembly to cast its glow directly backward. Warm white light flooded outward from the vehicle's roof, blasting straight into the faceless one's face. The creature faltered for a split second, blinded by the intense brightness, but quickly regained its speed and resumed its pursuit. Standard lighting barely hindered it any longer. Its second form granted drastically improved tolerance to harsh illumination. The damaged side gate came into view ahead. The bent sheet metal frame, warped upward from Guhin's initial breach, still hung in its original position. Its edges were polished smooth by contact with the RV's armor plating. Guhin never eased off the gas, charging straight through the gate opening. The RV's front armor slammed hard against the jagged remnants of the gate frame with a dull, thunderous crash. The whole vehicle shuddered violently before bursting out into the exterior access road. Potholed, uneven pavement streaked past beneath the headlights. Guhin pushed the speedometer up to 60 kilometers per hour before continuing to accelerate. The vehicle jostled over scattered rubble and sunken depressions in the asphalt. The faceless one did not follow them outside the laboratory building. Glancing in the rearview mirror, Guhin watched it come to a complete standstill at the gate threshold. Its charcoal gray body melted into the shadowed frame of the doorway, leaving only its glowing amber pupils visible in the darkness. It had halted at the boundary. A realization crossed Guhin's mind. The creature could not leave this facility, or more accurately, it was bound by some constraint that kept it from venturing outside the laboratory compound. The amber eyes burned bright within the gateway shadows for several more seconds before slowly receding inch by inch, vanishing into the deeper darkness within the laboratory building entirely. Guhin eased back slightly on the gas to smooth out the RV's ride along the rough access road. The crunch of tires grinding over loose stones echoed clearly inside the quiet driver's cabin. He used the internal observation mirror to check on the passengers in the rear compartment. Suche leaned against the edge of the sofa with her tactical backpack resting at her feet, readjusting the backpack's shoulder straps methodically. Tai Jiang sat beside her, still gripping his shotgun with its barrel pointed safely toward the vehicle floor. Lao Zhao slumped against the interior wall, breathing heavily with his eyes closed. His complexion had improved marginally, with fresh bandages wrapped around his burned forearm. The two remaining survivors huddled in the corner. One sat with knees drawn to his chest in silent dejection, while the other stared anxiously out the windows at the endless black wilderness beyond the road. "Everyone still breathing?" Guan asked. "We're alive." Suche lifted her gaze toward the driver's seat. "We retrieved everything we went for." "What exactly did you secure?" Guhan refocused his attention on the road ahead, where the reflective sheen of the main roadway was now visible at the end of the access path, marking smoother driving conditions ahead. The second-floor warehouse held 3 primary stockpiles of supplies. Suche replied as she unzipped her tactical backpack and began laying out its contents. First, vehicle modification materials. Sheets of high-tensile alloy plate, a roll of bulletproof fiber fabric, plus 3 unfinished functional modules, a speed enhancement unit, a base framework for an onboard medical bay, and a driving assistance sensor array. All are incomplete assemblies requiring further calibration and assembly to become operational. The long metal crate Tai Jiang hauled holds a finished factory modification kit produced directly by the laboratory. Tai Jiang tapped the side of the metal crate with his boot, producing a dull hollow thud from within. Second category, firearms and ammunition. Suche pulled a black standard-issue handgun from the bag and twirled it casually in her palm. Roughly 5 handguns in total, alongside 2 full ammunition crates covering assorted calibers, plus 1 box of shotgun shells for the short-barreled scattergun. We also recovered 2 tactical daggers, a primary medical pack, and an assortment of emergency pharmaceutical supplies. Third, survival provisions. A dozen packs of compressed nutrient bars, a sealed box of water purification tablets, several emergency glow sticks, plus rolls of sterile gauze and tourniquets for field first aid. Guhan nodded in approval. The distribution of supplies exceeded his expectations. Modification hardware and weapon ammunition were his most pressing shortages at present. "What components are included in that sealed crates kit?" he questioned. Suche looked over at Tai Jiang, who shrugged to signal he had not pried open the container during transport. "We can inspect it once we reach a safe resting spot," Suche stated. "For now, could you drive us back to where our convoy vehicles are parked?" The armored RV bypassed makeshift roadblocks set up by highway bandits and other hostile scavenger groups, bumping along the gravel access road before merging back onto the paved main thoroughfare. Guhan drove a short distance back along their original travel route and pulled over at a wide, unobstructed stretch of pavement. He cut the vehicle engine but kept the dashboard lighting and interior cabin power active. The warm, well-lit safety of the RV stood in stark contrast against the pitch-black wasteland outside its windows. Suche surveyed the RV's furnished interior, her gaze lingering on the wooden flooring, fabric-lined wall panels, and the steadily running onboard water purifier for a few moments. Her facial expression remained largely impassive, yet Tai Jiang, positioned directly behind her, scanned the living quarters with obvious curiosity, his jaw tightening as he held back unspoken comments. "My group's vehicles are parked 500 meters forward," Suche informed him. "Let's divide the supplies first, then we can discuss our next respective paths." "Understood." Guhan twisted his torso in the driver's seat to face the rear cabin. "Draw up a breakdown list for allocation." Suche worked with impressive efficiency. She emptied every item from her tactical backpack onto the foldable table, adding the long metal crate, plus smaller supply pouches carried by the 2 other survivors to compile a complete inventory sorted by category. Modification materials: 4 half-square-meter lightweight, high-strength alloy structural plates, 1 roll of bulletproof fiber fabric, 2 meters wide by 5 meters long, 3 unfinished functional modules, speed booster module, onboard medical bay foundational module, driving assistance sensing array, all only fitted with outer casings and basic circuitry, needing additional modification work to activate. Weapons munitions: 3 standard service pistols with 2 full ammo loads totaling approximately 200 rounds, 1 short barrel shotgun with a single box of shotgun cartridges, 2 tactical combat daggers, 1 comprehensive medical pack, assorted emergency medicinal supplies, survival supplies, over a dozen compressed food ration bars, 1 container of water purification tablets, multiple emergency light sticks, several rolls of medical gauze, and hemostatic tourniquets. Tai Jiang then set the long metal crate down atop the table surface. The container measured roughly 1 meter in length and 30 centimeters in width, finished in matte dark gray metal with an unbroken factory seal, printed with laboratory branding and a QR code pattern marking. This was untouched when we found it, Tai Jiang explained. It sat alone on the innermost warehouse shelf surrounded by empty crates, the only container with its factory seal still intact. Guhin ran a palm along the crate's cold, smooth exterior. No system notification popped up, confirming the seal had to be removed to identify the contents sealed inside. Who will cut the seal? Suche asked. Guhin met her eyes steadily. We retrieved this together, so we open it together. He retrieved a utility blade from a kitchen drawer and carefully sliced through the adhesive seal strip. The crate's metal latches sprung open automatically as he lifted the lid. Every component inside was nestled securely within anti-static foam padding. Once lifted free, they revealed a fully organized factory modification kit. A system prompt immediately materialized before everyone's vision. LV.3 Vehicle Hull Structural Upgrade Kit Factory Finish Detected. Contents included 1x Chassis Suspension Reinforcement Module, 4x Lightweight Hull Frame Reinforcement Inserts, 1x Cockpit Integrated Protection Unit. Directly compatible for LV.3 Vehicle Upgrade Procedures. No supplementary raw materials required aside from an elite-grade core component. After reading the system notification, Guhin lifted his head to meet Suche's gaze. She had also seen the floating system text, as did every other person present inside the vehicle. A complete ready-to-use LV.3 upgrade kit, Suche repeated flatly, her tone factual rather than greedy. This gear cost us nearly our lives to retrieve. Tai Jiang let out a low huff from beside the table. It's priceless hardware, but useless to us when our vehicles haven't even reached LV.2 standards yet. Suche had obviously reached the same conclusion. She fell silent for 2 seconds before speaking up. Guhin, state your terms for splitting these goods. Guhin did not rush into a reply, mentally tallying his current resource demands. Firearms and ammunition were useful, but not his most urgent priority right now. The bulletproof fiber and alloy plates would prove valuable for future vehicle retrofits, and his onboard first aid supplies were completely depleted, making medical stock vital to restock. Without question, the LV.3 upgrade kit was the most valuable haul by far. He already possessed an elite-grade core and the corresponding upgrade blueprints. This kit was the final missing piece to advance his vehicle's capabilities. I will claim this upgrade kit, he stated firmly. You and your team may pick whatever remaining supplies you need first. I will take whatever stock is left over. Suche studied his face for several heartbeats before giving her consent. Agreed, on one condition. Guhin waited for her to elaborate. You keep the kit, and in exchange, you owe me a favor. Suche laid out her terms plainly. I won't call upon repayment today. If I encounter an unresolvable crisis further down the line, I ask that you lend your aid if your circumstances permit. Guhin weighed the weight of her proposal. This was no empty polite gesture nor a shallow test of goodwill. It was a clear, formal trade. She surrendered the highest value loot in exchange for a binding promise of future assistance. What kind of assistance would you require? He questioned. I cannot predict it now, Suche answered. Dangers are endless out here in the wasteland. Raging superstorms roam the territory, mutated beasts lurk around every corner, and many human scavenger groups are far more ruthless than any monster. I will never demand you undertake suicidal missions. I only ask for support when my group faces threats we cannot overcome alone, provided you are available to help. Tai Jiang interjected into the conversation. This is a fair bargain. You walk away with a critical upgrade right now, while her claim is merely a verbal commitment that may never even get invoked. Lao Zhao nodded in agreement. He's got the right of it. Guhin deliberated briefly. He desperately needed this upgrade kit. Based on his previous vehicle upgrades, advancing from level 2 to level 3 would deliver a transformative leap in his RV's overall performance and defensive power. He already had unlimited onboard electrical power, reinforced armor plating, and a stable reserve of survival goods. His vehicle's foundational framework was the last major bottleneck, holding back further improvements. Deal. He extended one hand forward. The kit is mine, and I will honor this favor owed. Suche clasped his hand in a firm, decisive handshake. We have an agreement. Dividing the leftover supplies proceeded with equal speed and efficiency. Suche's group claimed the majority of firearms and ammunition, the full roll of bulletproof fiber fabric, plus half of all medical supplies. The two civilian survivors each received a portion of compressed food rations alongside one tactical dagger apiece. Taijiang voluntarily left the alloy plates and the unfinished onboard medical bay module with Guan, commenting that his own vehicle lacked the workspace to install such modifications. Hoping to earn a minor favor in return for the gesture, Guhan accepted the materials without hesitation. His core survival principle was to never turn down usable resources of any kind. Once the allocation was finished, Su Che stood upright and glanced out the vehicle windows into the dark exterior. My people are waiting 500 meters ahead. It is time for us to depart. We can communicate through direct messages on the system's trade marketplace platform if either side requires assistance later on. She pushed open the side door and jumped down onto the roadside pavement, with Taijiang following closely while carrying their team's allocated supplies. Lao Zhao paused beside the driver's window, offered Guhin a silent nod of acknowledgement, then stepped out into the night alongside the others. Footsteps faded into the distance as the last two survivors exited the RV. Guhin watched through the windshield as the group headed toward a cluster of vehicles parked along the road shoulder. Su Che's off-road SUV and Taijiang's pickup truck flickered to life, with their headlights illuminating the darkness. Engine roars rumbled to life, and the three vehicles merged into the black veil of the night and vanished from sight. He shut the vehicle door firmly, returned to the driver's seat, and stowed the Tier 3 upgrade kit, alloy panels, and basic onboard medical module together inside the storage cabinet. Settling back into the driver's seat, he pulled up the system interface. On the vehicle stats page, the text, "Next upgrade requirement. Reach Tier 3. Acquire advanced blueprints," still lingered on screen. A brand new prompt had appeared directly underneath it. Tier 3 finished upgrade kit detected. Usable with no extra materials required. Initiate upgrade. Gushin tapped confirm. Estimated upgrade duration, 1 hour. Vehicle mobility will be restricted during the process. Verify surrounding safety first. 1 full hour. The process took far longer than the Tier 2 upgrade. Su Che's group had already driven off, leaving nothing but empty open land, darkness, and whistling wind all around. Gushin started the RV and drove roughly 1 kilometer along the road shoulder until he spotted a sunken roadside hollow sheltered on 3 sides by earthen slopes. He parked the vehicle here with its nose facing outward and cranked the roof searchlights to maximum output, casting illumination across a 50-meter radius. He cut the engine, yet kept the entire vehicle powered up. Warmth filled the cabin, soft lights glowed steadily, and the water purifier hummed quietly as it operated. The upgrade countdown on the system interface began ticking down. His vehicle was undergoing its evolution right now. Leaning back against the seat, he closed his eyes and steadied his breathing little by little. Tier 3. Just wait and see what this brings. The countdown began at 59 minutes and 59 seconds. Instead of idling away the time, Gushin reorganized all supplies stored within the cabin. Bags of rice and canned goods were stacked neatly inside kitchen lockers. First aid kits went into the mirrored cabinet above the sink, and his tactical dagger was hung on a hook beside the driver's seat for instant access. The alloy structural plates and unfinished onboard medical module were tucked into storage compartments beneath the bed, to be dealt with once the upgrade concluded. Roughly 40 minutes into the process, physical changes started sweeping through the RV's interior. Modifications began in the driver's compartment first. The original rough engineering plastic steering wheel was replaced with a leather-wrapped unit molded with 2 thumb indentations. The dashboard received a larger, higher-resolution liquid crystal display. Instead of only a few sparse lines of readout data, a complete vehicle status dashboard loaded up. Manual seat controls were swapped out for fully electric adjustment functions. Gushin pressed the buttons along the seat flank, tilting the backrest backward. Held securely and comfortably, the sensation briefly transported Gushin back to his life before the collapse. Next came the ceiling. The original linear ceiling lighting remained intact, supplemented by a full perimeter ambient light strip switchable between warm yellow, cool white, and pale blue tones. Small built-in storage cubbies were embedded beside the lighting strips, covered with hinged panels for storing lightweight belongings. The kitchen area expanded to nearly double its original size. The dual induction cooktop was upgraded to a triple burner model. The stainless steel prep counter extended by half a meter. His old refrigerator was swapped for a larger side-by-side unit, with clearly partitioned refrigeration and freezer zones. A system notice popped up: fresh ingredients may be stored. Extended preservation period of 7 days active. The water purifier was upgraded to a reverse osmosis system with double the water output capacity, integrated with an instant hot water dispenser. Gu Shun poured himself a cup of perfectly tempered hot water, the warmth spreading soothingly through his stomach as he drank. Upgrades then moved to the living quarters. The foldable table transformed into an adjustable height multi-functional surface. Lowered fully, it served as a coffee table. When unfolded, the sofa converted into a 1.2-meter wide sofa bed, vastly more restful than the original fixed bench seating. The wall renovations surprised Gu Shun most of all. The former soft wall paneling was replaced with thicker soundproof material finished in dark gray woven textured cladding. After closing the vehicle doors, the howling wind outside vanished entirely, leaving the cabin hushed and secluded from the harsh external world. Modifications reached the sleeping area next. A partitioned private bedroom space was created, sealed off from the main living zone by a sliding door. Wall-mounted nightstands featured built-in wireless charging pads and lidded drawers for miscellaneous storage. A compact wall-mounted television was installed at the foot of the bed. The bathroom received a full overhaul as well. A tempered glass partition split the shower area into separate wet and dry zones with a constant pressure thermostatic showerhead. Gu Shun stood in the center of the cabin and slowly turned to survey his surroundings. Warm lighting illuminated every corner uniformly. The kitchen counters were tidy and orderly. This was no longer merely an RV. It was a fully mobile bachelor apartment, drivable, defensible, livable, and entirely functional for long-term survival. Opening the system interface once more, he saw the upgrade progress bar sitting at 95%. The final round of changes manifested on the vehicle exterior. Through the windows, Gu Shun watched the dark gray composite armor contract, compress, and rearrange its structure. Clunky, cobbled-together visual flaws disappeared entirely from the vehicle's silhouette, replaced with smooth, streamlined factory-engineered body lines. The vehicle windows received a final glass replacement upgrade from dual-layer explosion-proof panes to triple-layer composite ballistic glass. The progress bar hit 100%, and a system notification popped up, upgrade complete. Current vehicle Tier 3. Returning to the driver's seat, Gu Shun ran a hand across the new leather steering wheel to test the ergonomic indentations before opening the main system panel. A new line of text appeared on the vehicle information screen. Global First Tier 3 Vehicle Upgrade recorded. Player Gu Shun is confirmed as the first survivor worldwide to complete Tier 3 vehicle advancement. Rewards being distributed. Immediately afterward, a golden global announcement scrolled across the system interface, visible to every survivor alive. The announcement remained displayed for 10 seconds before fading gradually from view. Gu Shun stared at the blank space where the bulletin had been for a quiet moment before exhaling slowly. The laser cannon module granted as the first completion reward would be useless scrap metal for most survivors due to its massive power requirements. Yet in Gu Shun's hands, it would become an unstoppable combat weapon. He pulled open the system trading marketplace, and the global chat channel had erupted into chaos the instant the announcement went live. Tier 3 already? How is this possible? I haven't even gathered materials for the Tier 1 upgrade. Who is Gu Shun? Anyone know which regional server they're from? What's their upgrade method? A vehicle-mounted laser cannon module. What even is that? Does the system really hand out weaponry as rewards? I'm still driving a beat-up old van, while someone's already rocking a Tier 3 RV. Is there some kind of game exploit going on here? Begging for a powerful ally. Mr. Gu, are you online? I'll work as your subordinate. I've got half a tank of gasoline to offer. This is totally unfair. I risk my life scavenging supplies daily and ration every drop of fuel. Meanwhile, someone's vehicle hits Tier 3 out of nowhere. Probably just got lucky with a premium starting vehicle. I spawned with an electric bicycle and don't even have intact doors right now. How am I supposed to reach Tier 3? Did anyone catch the wording, first Tier 3? Other players will unlock it eventually, but he's literally number 1 out of 8 billion people globally. What model is his vehicle? Could anyone share a picture at least? Is he active right now? At Gu Shun, please respond. I spotted a dark gray vehicle earlier that looked like an RV, but with a completely modified frame. There was some equipment mounted on the roof I couldn't make out. Could that have been Gu Shun's ride? Why didn't you follow it to check? My top speed was half of whatever that vehicle was moving at. I floored the gas pedal and only managed to watch its taillights shrink into the distance. Hilarious. You couldn't even catch up to a Tier 3 vehicle's taillights. Does anyone have a step-by-step guide for Tier 1 upgrades? I've never even found a relevant blueprint. Quit fixating on upgrades for now. Focus on surviving tonight first. Gu Shun scrolled through the flood of chat messages, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. He left no reply in the public channel, closing the interface to refocus his attention on his upgraded vehicle. Walking over to the kitchen, he opened the brand new refrigerator. Both refrigerated and frozen compartments sat empty, and a system alert flickered. Closing the fridge door, he activated the hot water dispenser once more for another drink held at a steady 65 degrees Celsius, ideal for immediate consumption. He returned to the driver's seat, readjusted his seating position, switched the ambient lighting to warm yellow, and ignited the engine. The startup noise was virtually undetectable. Improved sound damping and shock absorption limited engine ignition to a faint low-frequency vibration barely perceptible within the cabin. Gushun shifted into drive and pressed lightly on the accelerator. The RV merged onto the main highway and quickly settled at 110 kilometers per hour. Gushun rested one hand on the steering wheel and lifted the access panel covering the roof mounting ports. A brand new connection interface was visible. Gushun held his cruising speed steady at 110 kilometers per hour. Thanks to the upgraded suspension system, road vibration at this velocity was milder than driving 60 kilometers per hour in his original unmodified RV. While familiarizing himself with the adjustable electric seat controls via the side-mounted buttons, he noticed a vehicle closing in fast through the rearview mirror. A low-profile, sleek red sports car rapidly closed the gap from behind. A bright red high-performance vehicle stood out conspicuously amid the bleak wasteland highway landscape. Gushun glanced at it briefly before returning his focus forward, continuing along his route without concern. Instead of overtaking once it drew within 50 meters, the sports car matched speed to drive parallel alongside his RV. Gushun turned his head to study the other vehicle. A woman with loose long hair sat in the driver's seat with carefully applied makeup. She smiled toward Gushun through the vehicle window and gestured toward the roadside, signaling for him to pull over. Gushun ignored the gesture and faced forward again. The red sports car persisted, edging half a car length ahead while sounding its horn repeatedly. Gushun eased onto the brakes and pulled onto the road shoulder to halt. The sports car parked directly behind him, and its driver's side door swung open. The woman stepped out, wearing a tailored outerwear piece clearly salvaged from an abandoned shopping mall, fitted denim jeans, and high-top tactical boots. She walked toward the RV with deliberate, exaggerated hip sway in her stride. Gushun cracked his window open a narrow slit. "Hello there." The woman leaned forward with both hands resting on the window frame, her eyes crinkling into a cheerful smile. Gushun stared at her without uttering a single word. Undaunted by his silence, she kept her warm smile intact. "My name is Meng Ting. I'm traveling alone as well, same as you. My sports car is nearly out of fuel, and a severe storm system is tracking this way. I work better alone," Gushun replied flatly. "I've grown accustomed to solitary travel." Meng Ting's smile faltered for a split second before she recovered her cheerful demeanor instantly. "Don't dismiss the idea so quickly. I'm a useful travel companion. I can cook meals, operate vehicles competently, and administer basic emergency first aid. I have a working induction cooktop for cooking, full command of my own vehicle, and roof-mounted searchlights to monitor surrounding terrain. I have no need for any of the services you've listed." Meng Ting's composure wavered visibly. She stole a quick glance through the narrow window slit at the warm cabin lighting, polished wooden flooring, and tidy kitchen counters. "Long isolated drives can feel extremely lonely when traveling solo," she said in a softer tone. Gushun regarded her calmly without being swayed by her words. "You claimed proficiency in emergency first aid just now." "That's right. I previously worked at a beauty salon and received training for superficial wound care and basic bandaging techniques. Beauty salon training covers skincare management, not emergency trauma care," Gushun responded coolly. Meng Ting's mouth fell open with no immediate answer, her confident smile fading into obvious uncertainty. "You claimed full competence only moments ago, yet now admit you cannot remember fundamental knowledge," Gushun stated plainly. "I have no intention of granting passage to someone lacking practical survival skills, Meng Ting." Meng Ting's smile vanished completely. She straightened up and stepped backward a short distance, her pleasant tone hardening into sharp irritation amid the frigid wind. "Why are you being so unreasonable? I approached you politely with a reasonable request, and you act as if you're untouchable? It's just a modified RV after all. I never actually wanted to tag along with you anyway." Gushun nodded faintly. "If you truly feel that way, there is no reason for you to linger. You're free to leave whenever you choose." Meng Ting's expression shifted through multiple shades of anger and resentment as she stared at Gushun for several seconds, confirming he would not reconsider his decision. She spun sharply on her heel, her high heels clicking harshly against the asphalt as she marched back to her red sports car and slammed the vehicle door shut with force. Gushun watched her sports car pull away, perform a U-turn and speed back down the highway in the opposite direction, its taillights shrinking rapidly into the night darkness. He rolled his window fully closed, restarted his engine, and continued east along the highway. The entire confrontation lingered on his thoughts for no more than 20 seconds. Meng Ting, however, had no intention of letting the matter drop. Approximately 2 kilometers down the highway, she parked her red sports car at the roadside. Her chest heaved with suppressed fury as her fingernails dug hard into the steering wheel's leather wrapping. She opened the system marketplace and scrolled quickly through her contact list until she located a specific chat thread. Since the highway survival catastrophe began, she had encountered countless hostile motorists, nearly all of whom she had evaded through manipulation and smooth talk. This man named Gu Shun was different. She replayed their conversation in her mind, recalling the reinforced roof fixtures and vacant hardware ports she had spotted on his RV. She opened a private message channel with a grayed-out profile belonging to a notorious gang that specialized in ambushing and robbing wandering survivors. "Are you online? I've reconsidered your previous proposal. I'll join your crew and follow your orders unconditionally, on one single condition." A raspy voice message arrived almost immediately from the other end, edged with mocking amusement. "Conditions? Weren't you dead set on traveling independently before now? What changed your mind? I've realized my mistake, and I've always admired your group's strength. I found an extremely valuable target just now and came straight to offer this intelligence as a gesture of good faith. I'm certain you saw the global system announcement earlier. I crossed paths with the very first Tier 3 survivor worldwide. His upgraded RV is lavishly furnished and guaranteed to be stocked with massive quantities of rare supplies." Several muted voices conversed briefly in the background on the audio feed before the gravelly tone spoke again with lazy satisfaction. "You can positively confirm this vehicle belongs to that announced player? It's definitely him. I memorized his license plate number and the unique exterior design of his RV. He's currently heading east along the main highway at a moderate cruising speed. This is the perfect opportunity to strike an incredibly lucrative target within easy reach." More hushed discussion echoed from the gang's side before the lead speaker replied leisurely. "Very well. Lead us to his position, and we'll follow your trail. You'll receive a generous cut of all looted goods once the operation concludes. You won't need to rely on manipulating strangers for safe passage ever again once you're part of our crew." A cold smirk spread across Meng Ting's face as she sent a voice reply through the system. "His roof laser cannon mount is empty with no weapon installed yet. You must move quickly to seize him before he equips the armament. Once it's mounted, your vehicles will never be able to close the distance. Rest assured, he won't escape our grasp." Meng Ting set down her device, ignited her sports car engine, and turned back onto the highway to trail Gu Shun's path. She pushed her vehicle to high speed while maintaining enough distance to keep his taillights out of sight. At the same time, she shared her real-time system location data with the band of vehicle raiders hunting other survivors. Dozens of vehicle headlights flickered to life within the dark roadside wilderness behind her. Meng Ting's grin deepened sharply. "You wanted to survive as a lone wolf? Now you'll become prey surrounded by an entire pack of hunters." Meng Ting murmured quietly to herself, pleased with the trap she had orchestrated. Gu Shun had been driving for roughly 10 minutes, yet the red sports car never appeared in his rearview mirror. Still, he noticed something odd. Vehicle lights were flickering up ahead on the highway, not coming head-on, but parked sideways across the entire roadway. He eased on the brakes. For 100 meters forward, 3 vehicles were positioned horizontally to fully block the road: a modified pickup truck, a mid-size SUV, and a box truck, all with their front ends pointed straight toward him. Gu Shun brought the RV to a complete stop. The instant his wheels settled still, more headlights flared to life in his rearview mirror. At least 4 vehicles emerged from the shadowed verges behind him, cutting off his retreat. Including Meng Ting's red sports car, 8 vehicles formed a complete encirclement. Figures materialized from the darkness lining both sides of the highway, gathering along the harsh glow of the headlights. Some clutched firearms, others brandished crowbars and steel pipes, while 2 men hefted crude spears welded together from steel tubing and scrap metal. Meng Ting's red sports car sat at the outermost edge of the cordon. She stayed inside the vehicle, staring toward Gu Shun through the windshield. A man stepped out from the group of highway bandits. Tall and bald, clad in a grimy army green jacket, he carried no weapon in his hands, but wore a long blade sheathed at his waist. He halted 20 meters in front of the RV and tilted his head upward to shout at the driver's window. "Listen up inside that vehicle. You're completely surrounded. We have no intention of killing you. Toss out your vehicle keys, leave all your supplies, and we'll let you walk away unharmed." Seated in the driver's seat, Gu Shun watched the scene outside through his newly installed triple-layer composite bulletproof glass. His fingers hovered over the central control panel as he pulled up the vehicle status readout. Armor integrity, undamaged powertrain, fully operational weapon modules, uninstalled, inactive. He had yet to mount the laser cannon, but a Tier 3 RV was a formidable weapon all on its own. He glanced at the thickness rating for the front armor plating, nearly double the protection offered by its Tier 2 predecessor. Total vehicle mass had increased substantially, but the infinite power supply feeding the drive system negated nearly all performance losses when accelerating. Growing impatient with Gu Shun's lack of response, the bald man waved an arm toward his men. Two bandits raised their homemade spears and advanced slowly toward the RV. Gu Shun did not wait for them to draw near. He shifted into drive and slammed the accelerator flat against the floor. The armored RV surged forward without the slightest lag. Driven by limitless electrical power, the engine unleashed its full torque, hurtling the vehicle forward like a feral beast freed from its chains. The bald man's face contorted with terror the moment the RV's high beams washed over him. He spun to run, but human legs stood no chance against a fully accelerated Tier 3 armored RV, not even for a fraction of a second. The RV's reinforced front plate slammed into his back. A dull thud echoed through the cabin, while the vehicle barely registered any resistance before the man vanished beneath the hood. The modified pickup truck formed the first barricade directly in his path. Its driver frantically tried to start the engine and reverse out of the way, but his reaction came too late. Gu Shun's RV crashed sideways into the pickup at nearly 80 kilometers per hour. The massive weight disparity was devastating. The pickup's chassis jacked violently upward before the vehicle flipped violently across the asphalt. Sheet metal and shards of glass sprayed outward across the pavement. Crash! A second SUV attempted to ram the RV from its right flank. Its front grille collided hard against the RV's side armor with a deafening bang. The SUV's front end crumpled instantly, bumpers shattered, hood panels crumpled inward, and scalding steam billowed from ruptured radiator lines. In contrast, the RV's armor bore only faint scuff marks, not even piercing the topcoat paint layer. Gu Shun never lifted his foot from the gas. A small tug on the steering wheel sent the SUV careening sideways off the highway. The wreck spun twice across the pavement before slamming into the guardrail, hissing with smoke as it ground to a halt. The box truck ahead charged head-on in a desperate stand, its driver clearly the most reckless of the bandits. He locked into gear and gunned the engine for a direct head-on collision. Gu Shun held his course without swerving. The two vehicles crashed together dead center on the highway. A thunderous impact rippled outward. The truck's front cabin crumpled inward as if constructed from paper, its engine block driven backward into the driver's compartment and crushing the front end inward by nearly half a meter. The driver was pinned against his seat by the deployed airbag, completely immobilized. The RV's front armor only sustained minor scratches and shallow indentations. The passenger cabin inside remained entirely unscathed. Gu Shun shifted into reverse and tapped the gas to back up several meters, shaking loose truck debris stuck to the front plating. He then re-engaged forward drive, pivoted the RV around, and charged toward the remaining vehicles closing in from the rear. One off-road vehicle never managed to fire up its engine before the RV's side armor clipped its rear quarter panel. The car was sent sliding sideways, lifting off the ground briefly before slamming back down in a full rollover. Another sedan tried to dart around the RV's flank. Gu Shun twisted the wheel sharply, driving the RV's nose squarely into the sedan's rear wheel assembly. The rear suspension tore cleanly apart on impact, the wheel tearing free entirely, leaving the vehicle crippled and smoking on the roadway. From her position on the perimeter, Meng Ting watched every brutal moment unfold. She witnessed the pickup get tossed and overturned, the SUV sent flying aside. The box truck's front cabin crumpled beyond repair, the off-roader flip across the asphalt, and the sedan lose its rear wheel, all unfolding in under 3 minutes. Her mouth hung open, her body rigid in the driver's seat. Her mind struggled to process the violent spectacle unfolding right before her eyes, unable to keep pace with the chaotic visual input. Panic spread through the bandits, and many abandoned their vehicles to flee. Two men scrambled out of the wrecked sedan, dropping their steel pipes and scrambling headlong into the barren wilderness beside the road without a single backward glance. Another crawled out of the rolled-off rotor, blood streaming down his face, dragging an injured leg as he hobbled desperately toward the highway shoulder. The drivers of the two remaining vehicles watched the entire massacre unfold. Without waiting for the RV to reach their position, one floored the accelerator and fled back down the highway. its taillights shrinking into the night until they vanished completely. The second tried to detour along the road shoulder, only to wedge its chassis firmly into a roadside ditch, trapped with no way forward or backward.